People earning over $10,000 a month? What do you do? Story 1. I manage developers and engineers to make meetings where we talk about the same thing and don't make any progress for years at a time. People have no idea how much of IT is like this. I'm a sysadmin who often gets pulled into those sorts of meetings, and I can tell you from experience that design by committee, decision paralysis, and inertia have kept so many projects in the meeting phase for months, if not years. I'm also well over the $10,000 a month mark, and a very tiny portion of that is paying me to actually do things. Most of it is paying me to know how to do things and to know how to talk about doing things. My partner just got laid off. She's a front-end technical owner. I think that's what it's called. She rocks with efficiency and team management. Upper management never bothered to consult prior to making changes and decided they would issue tickets, assignments. Caused a cluster of a mess. Company losing big money, and now layoffs have started while managers sit and talk about the same thing over and over. Story 2. Air Traffic Controller. I've taken the NavCan Canadian test, and it is really difficult. Very few pass the first round of aptitude tests, and among those who do, I heard 20 to 30% drop out in the first few months of training. It requires a really specific kind of spatial awareness and multitasking ability that you can't really train for. I was totally exhausted after just 3 hours of testing, more than any university exam. Anyone interested should still try though. It pays excellently and only requires a high school diploma and the ability to speak English and your local language. Learning to do the job is the hardest part. Once you've got it figured out, it's generally some variation of the same handful of patterns over and over, even though no 2 days are quite alike. Most days are pretty routine. Weather days are where you truly earn your money. The schedule is the other kicker. It's a 24/7, 365-day operation. I've worked every weekend since 2016, unless I used vacation time. In 2023, we just told my kids it was Christmas on the 24th. I once got off a boat at an airport and stood on the edge waiting for the air traffic control to tell me I could cross the runway and go inside the airport, prior to 2001. I watched as all the planes that were taxiing came to a stop and the air traffic controller gave me the thumb up to let me know I could cross. Everyone inside the terminal was watching me casually walk across the runway. Story 3. I make over $10K a month for 9 months out of the year. My wife and I own an exterior cleaning company. We do window cleaning, gutter cleaning, and pressure washing. In November, we make over $20K. Took 9 years and a lot of hard work. We started off making only $20,000 in our first year. With word of mouth and advertising, we have doubled just about every year. Also, residential window cleaning costs way more than commercial. Gutter cleaning is also a killer. We do about 9 homes a day, charging about $165 per job. I believe this. My lawn service is a husband and wife team. They're the best we've ever used, and they service almost my entire neighborhood plus many others. They easily make $80 an hour during lawn mowing season, $40 per mow, 2 yards an hour. Finding reliable home maintenance people who do a consistently good job is worth every penny. I wanted to start this last summer and was talked out of it on Reddit. I wasn't looking to get too heavy into the chemicals and thought basic fees for basic vinyl siding cleaning, like if I was cleaning my own home exterior. Can I ask how much pre-knowledge on the chemicals and pressure washing / soft washing specifics you spent time learning before starting? I make about $10K monthly now as a web developer, but my current workload is minimal, and after cleaning the exterior of my home last spring, I thought it would be a nice summer / fall extra gig that I could have my teenage son help with, and eventually do himself when he was 18-ish and through college. By my figures, even doing a couple of houses per week at a discounted rate seems like a very nice side hustle. NB4, not taking away anything from the work and knowledge involved in doing this, it is time-consuming and boring and can be difficult work, but thought it would be similar to a lawn mowing / landscaping business. If you're not afraid to put in the hard work, you can make money even if you do minimal / small jobs. Story 4. Crane operator in the oil field. Work 13 hours a day for 20 days and then I'm off 10. I've gotten in the crane 2 times so far in the last 10 hours. I'm curious about this because I started watching Landman about oil fields. Would you say that your pay is above average for the oil fields, or is almost everyone out there making about $120K plus a year? Crane operators typically make more than the average oil field hand and have one of the easier jobs. The trade-off is that they often have very little control over their schedule, and they are one of the few oil field positions that can be personally held liable for causing injuries or deaths to others on location. The guy you are responding to says he has a 20-day on, 10-day off schedule, but I've worked on sites where the operator just goes where the crane goes for as long as the crane is there. As far as your second question, yeah, pretty much everyone is making more than $100K per year. I was on a 14/7 schedule earning $170K after bonuses in 2019 as a field engineer. Now on a 14/14 schedule and loving only having to work half the year. Story 5. Put people to sleep for surgery. I was in prep for having my gallbladder removed. The pain came on out of the blue and it was nearly 24 hours before I could move into surgery. 2 hits of morphine just made me loopy. The pain never stopped, and it was severe. An anesthesiologist said some things that I honestly don't think I comprehended. Then they put a form in front of me to sign. I don't know what was on that form. I might have signed away my firstborn. I was definitely not in a state to be signing anything, but I didn't care. I understood enough that signing it might make the pain go away. Before the ink was even dry, they plunged something into my IV, and man oh man, the pain went from 11 out of 10 to 0 in an instant. That was the single greatest relief I've ever and probably will ever feel in my life. It was magic. I was so tired and could have fallen asleep in an instant, but had to stay awake a bit longer to get onto the table. Story 6. I write automated models to catch money laundering for large banks. We generate millions of alerts each month. Most of them are deemed false by machine learning models, and a few thousand then go to human investigators. Beyond that, I don't have visibility, but if the human investigators find something, they would freeze the accounts, contact the regulators, and file STRs depending on the jurisdiction of the activities. These models can be programmed to identify certain patterns. For example, someone depositing $5,000 every couple of days in order to avoid a currency transaction report for cash transactions over $10,000. This is a crime and could indicate money laundering. Not typically, though. The models can also flag an out-of-pattern transaction, such as a large cash deposit out of nowhere. This activity is then analyzed by back-office bank staff, and if deemed suspicious, a report is then filed. Not quite at the 10K mark, about 8K before tax, but will hit the 10K mark in the next 12-ish months. Automation governance for a large group of business lines. Due to organizational structure, knowledge is siloed, and I need to discuss with Area 1 what takes up your time, what needs to be automated, and then confirm that it's not more efficient to resolve up or down the pipeline, and that everything is resolved efficiently and effectively and remains legally permissible, so an audit doesn't slap them with "why the hell did you do this?" On one hand, it's a load more red tape and documentation. On the other hand, the developers get a request that actually fixes the problem, rather than fixing the same problem 5 times for different areas due to a data source issue. Story 7. Emergency Medicine PA. I do a lot of suturing and pull a lot of things out of people's butts because everyone slipped while naked getting out of the shower. I've been a volunteer EMT for 11 years now, and I've seen some pretty wild things, but I've yet to run a weird thing in the butt call. I think I'm the only emergency medical responder in the nation that hasn't. My old roommate actually slipped in the bathroom and got something stuck in his butt cheek specifically. I heard a bang and a scream and a lot of yelling. I ran to the door to check on him, and he tells me he needs help. He comes out with a towel covering his junk, and his electric toothbrush sticking out of his ass cheek. He said he was naked and about to brush his teeth after the shower, and the floor was wet and he slipped, and in the motion to try to catch himself, his toothbrush ended up under him, still in his hand, and he landed on it. The ER doctor who saw him said it was the first time he believed anyone who said they slipped and fell on something in their butt. Story 8. Project Manager. When I work 40 hours a week or less, it's worth it. When I'm working 70+ hours, I want to jump off a bridge. The work is not fulfilling, but I'm glad to pay the bills. I cannot give enough praise to my project manager. They probably don't get enough credit. They took 3 days off and all crap hit the fan. I try to tell them that daily. Sure, I get the credit for finishing the project. It's whatever. It's like giving the pianist the credit for the composition. Maybe that's a bad analogy. Ask my PM for a better one. I'm at a semiconductor company and it's big. Although I got offered the same position at Blue Origin for $140K, I'd have to move to Denver from Tampa Bay, but work out of Austin. Scheduling itself isn't hard, and I actually like it. The issue is all the other BS. I scheduled based on max capacity for an entire quarter based on what management told me. I already knew it was not going to go well and told them up front. Then they get mad when we don't meet these unrealistic dates, yet ask if we can improve. Or how I communicated project completion dates for 3 months and then waited until the day before they needed it, that they needed it pulled in 3 weeks on a 1-month lead time tool. Or the fact that I have to basically be part engineer, part buyer, and part project manager anyway with 0 of the pay. Plus people want answers for things I go over in my meetings. They want to know why we're late when we've said we're pushing due to capacity 5 times a week. Although to be fair, other schedulers at my company seem to not have to do that much, and definitely don't get into the crap I have to deal with. The project manager who handles my crap makes about $100K a year, but I think they should double her pay. She keeps all the freaking users away from me so I can finish my work and sends me a detailed list of requirements for every project. We only have a call every week or 2 unless there's an emergency or a special project I need to do. The lady is sent from God. She put a rule in place where basically no one is allowed to contact me directly. She sounds drunk all the time, but understandably so. Good PMs are awesome, but the majority are terrible. Story 9. $14,000 a month. Retired. Pension 1, Navy. Pension 2, Teacher. Pension 3, Social Security. When I was young and starting out, the military didn't pay squat, but I knew if I was lucky enough to survive 20 plus years, I did 30, then it would be worth the effort. The next solid gold pension was teaching high school. I truly enjoyed teaching and imparting knowledge, and I had a great rapport with my students, so earning 2 solid gold pensions was a long calculated plan, knowing that the private sector couldn't come near what I already earned. Same sorta. 1. USAF pension, 2. VA disability, 3. Work at a school for peanuts, non-teacher role. But all that combined makes me $10,000 a month, and it gives me the freedom to pick where I want to work and what I want to do without stressing about money. I worked on million and billion dollar aircraft for 20 plus years, and now I tell little kids to stop running in the hallways. Story 10. Senior software engineer not based in Silicon Valley. I was a director in Silicon, got paid $185K a year. I found the cheapest 4-bedroom for my family to live in that wasn't 3 hours from work, and I barely had any money to save. It was so expensive just to live there. I've seen those jobs, but some of the requirements feel impossible. HR always makes the requirements. Sometimes they are even literally impossible, like 5 years React in 2015. Apply anyway. The requirements are for a fantasy candidate. Just get in front of a human being and X years of Y experience becomes less relevant than showing you know your crap. At my company, we're full stack JS/TS, about 50-50 depending on the service. React and Node, Postgres and Redis, but stack generally won't matter to salary, unless you're in a niche industry like crypto or AI, or have in-demand archaic experience like COBOL or whatever. I make almost exactly $10K a month as an SSWE at a largish, unremarkable startup in an unsexy industry. I do have about 9 years of experience. Specific tech stack quickly starts becoming less relevant the further you go into actual senior SWE roles. You may have some core things you know really well. Mine are generative AI, Python, Spring Java, and AWS/IAC. But beyond a certain point, you're expected to just be able to figure out pretty much anything depending on what the problems your area faces are. The job descriptions are daunting because the expectations of seniors tend to be pretty intense. Story 11. Massage therapist. $250 per client, 3 every Monday through Friday, off weekends. Not including tips, by the way. Learn how to market yourself well and it flows smoothly. Love it so much. Only work for 3 hours and I'm done for the day. You have to have charisma and a decent look, by the way. Ex-nurse here. Really wish I would have gone the route for LMT sooner. Never looked back at nursing since then. The best part is the connections you make. Your clients will consist of possible doctors, lawyers, agents, etc. Good word goes around for you and you made it. Yes, your hands will be tired, but it's worth it. That's probably the major con, at least for me. Go where the money is. I live 10 minutes away from Woodlands, Texas, where the clients pay the big bucks. They won't bat an eye and hand it like pocket change. LMT here that went out on her own last year. God, I love it. I don't make $10K a month, but in the past 8 days I hit $2,500. I love my clients and have had good luck without even advertising extensively. I came from healthcare too, and I wish I switched sooner. Story 12. Airline pilot. This was my absolute dream job. Not for the money, but it's the only thing I've ever imagined I wouldn't tire of. Unfortunately, I have ADHD and the FAA doesn't allow symptoms or medication use. It really crushes me. I still cry every time I go to the airport. But I'm holding out hope they'll allow meds at some point. I'm only 21, so maybe there's a chance it's not over for me. Story 13. Linux System Administrator. I'm overpaid for this position, I think, but it's highly stressful. The biggest sources of stress in that role were usually technical debt, legacy systems that are old, messy, and fragile, but they run some critical business function that will have the CEO calling you personally if it hiccups. You can't improve them or stabilize them because they are either proprietary or the original developers are laid off, retired, or dead. Often it's some abomination of an app made by Oracle, IBM, SAP, or one of their minions. Dealing with the fallout of cheap, crappy, outsourced software decisions. You support the infrastructure it runs on, so you are going to be in every 1 a.m. troubleshooting bridge to calmly explain for the 100th time why the infrastructure is not sabotaging the application. It couldn't possibly be because the software was written by the lowest bidder and it runs like a jet ski on gravel. Being on call. If your environment is stable and you have leeway to automate and make improvements, it's not bad. If your environment is unstable or has lots of number 1 and number 2, it can be soul-crushing. I just took a Linux sysadmin position back in April. I wholly agree. I would also add, 1. Other sysadmins that spend half their time on YouTube and do everything manually, using sudo su, making it hard to trace their screw-ups. The same folks who come close to breaking prod every other week because they can't communicate with others the gravity of the STIG rules they're about to implement. Tediously shushing into every single server manually and hand-jamming the commands, not knowing how to write a damn Ansible playbook, when I've gone through all the work of setting up the inventory, ENV, and providing them training. 2. Not having access to the source code and having to understand how a legacy Java application works based on cryptic Perl scripts and JBoss error logs. 3. Being competent means being overworked, tasked, and overpenalized when it's on fire. It's exhausting. Story 14. Contrary to what YouTube tells you, sometimes you take a large pay cut when you start your own business. I was earning well over $10K a month at my corporate job before quitting to start a business. Took several years to get back there and beyond. Just a suggestion, but YouTube and TikTok is not a great source of entrepreneurial thought. It's sad to see it going down. I worked my job and my side gig. Every now and then you'd see someone get on a hype train for the hustle and leave their high-paying job to go all in, and in a few months to a year, there'd be a video about how they were struggling and getting a job again. It takes time to build up most businesses, if they even succeed, and those people seem to think they'll be able to instantly replace their income. I'm completely turned off by any ad that goes on about people hating the 9-to-5 life, and here's how to replace it with this little-known activity if you click here now. The real money comes from selling a program of how they'll teach you how to do it too. Story 15. Baker/chef, offshore oil production platform, 3-week on/off rotations. I did chefing on private yachts before going back to school around when COVID hit. Can confirm that the pay for chefs seems to more or less double once you get off dry land. I went from making about $60K a year in a restaurant to $120K per year with all the living expenses paid when I moved to yachts. Definitely worked for that money, and I didn't have nearly as nice of a schedule as 3 on 3 off, but it was fun when I was younger and didn't mind the long hours. Story 16. $242K per annual base salary, $20K per month. General counsel at an industrial manufacturing and construction company. That means I'm a lawyer and head of the legal department for a fairly big company. I've been a lawyer for almost 9 years and have done multiple kinds of law. That has allowed me to skip a few steps, but I'm also damn good at what I do and work my ass off. The only lawyers I know that are happy are in-house lawyers like me and some prosecutors, but they get paid like crap. But not everyone gets lucky enough to go in-house. If you're thinking about law, I would highly recommend that you reconsider. Do medicine, software, cybersecurity, or if you're hot, be a sugar baby, I guess. JK, don't do that, but anything but law. For those who might ask why not law, it starts with school. Everyone at law school was the smartest kid in every one of their classes from elementary school through college. Everyone. Then you go from that to being maybe the middle of the pack, a nobody, and it's super freaking cutthroat to get even there, but you learn to think like a lawyer, i.e. be a super obnoxious and hypercritical overthinker. Then you get to a law firm or a government job or whatever, and it turns out law school taught you very little, if anything, about being a lawyer. But you're expected to know or learn the rules and start billing time, or charging people with crimes, or protecting kids from abusive parents, or some other super freaking heavy thing at 25 years old. Don't get me wrong, I take a tremendous amount of pride in it, but imagine, if you will, keeping track of everything you do in 6-minute increments to get to 150 hours worth of billable hours of work a month. You can never get ahead. And at the very best, you are caught up until the first of the month when you are 150 hours behind again. It takes you 200 plus hours of actual work to get to 150 or 160 of billable time. This is not an exaggeration in any sense. Imagine also being the only thing between your client and 10 years in prison or losing their home or losing their business or kids. In my situation, I am constantly on the lookout for problems and watching for things that may become problems for my entire company. The mental burden is a lot. I am a borderline alcoholic and am only now learning to take care of myself again. It's been a long road and I'm on the right side of it now, but there were times when I could have easily not made it to tomorrow, if you catch my drift. Every lawyer I know tells people not to become a lawyer. I am married to an attorney in private practice who is about 6 years in and making about $230K a year. My stress level has decreased from the first couple of years, but it's still quite high. People's lives are often in your hands, which is a lot of pressure. Super high rate of alcoholism in the field, but if you can manage to stop drinking and exercise or do some other hobby instead, you will feel better long term. This is how I feel lawyering would be. It is an immense amount of pressure and work, and it is so complex even when it isn't. Y'all are great. Sometimes I try to figure out why the people making all the rules made their own profession so difficult. Just kidding. But seriously, the older I got, the more I realized being a lawyer would make me feel like I was trying to breathe while holding my breath. Just not compatible or sensible, and I don't know how any of you are surviving. Hope you keep going one day at a time, and the alcohol and you can come to an understanding. You deserve it. I 100% agree. The first years after law school were brutal. Ended up with panic attacks, now also in-house, and it finally feels like law school was worth it, but the first 5 years after law school were ruthless. Low salary, high debt, high stress, then the bar says, "We're here to help, don't turn to self-medication." But also, you must always be perfect for every case. I don't miss the hours of war room meetings on felony defense matters or complex civil litigation matters. I don't miss boardrooms full of discovery boxes to comb through, or the terabytes of data needing cataloging. In-house counsel is where it's at least in this position. Most likely no one is going to jail, at least immediately, or getting a death sentence. Story 17. I work 2 jobs, cybersecurity for one company full-time, $9K, and game developer contractor with another, $5K to $10K. The contractor job is based on completed work, so pay fluctuates on how much time I can dedicate to it. Same, except both jobs are programming. One is game dev, one isn't. I've also started a machine shop with the money from the first 2 jobs, so that's now number 3, and I let the CNCs run while I work on the game dev job. Story 18. Travel nurse. I travel across multiple states working 13-week contracts in ERs that are short-staffed. I work 3 days a week and try to take a month off after every contract. Pros are that you get to see something different every day. You with 3 days a week, you can make good money with an associate degree, you get to wear basically pajamas to work, it's an open job market, you get to genuinely help people. Cons are that it takes a few years of being exploited by a hospital before you can travel. You will be assaulted. You will see, smell, and touch incredibly disgusting things. You will see people of all ages die. It can be tough on the body with all the lifting. For me, it's all worth it to have the lifestyle I enjoy while being able to be there during people's worst times, and while I can't fix everything, I can make it easier. Story 19. Work in the same place for 20 years, starting at age 20 and slowly climbing my way from the guy emptying the trucks, shipping department, to senior leadership. I got 2 degrees along the way, but honestly, sticking with the job for a long while, treating people with honesty and respect, building relationships, and just generally never being an a-hole to anyone did more for my career than my 2 degrees. The richest person I personally knew did this. She worked her way up at a clothing store in the mall. She started in high school stocking shelves, worked her way up to GM, then got a job in corporate, worked her way up to a senior VP. She was making $375K back in 2005. I always tell people this. All of these dead-end jobs have corporate offices paying good money. It's not hard to distinguish yourself either when most of your coworkers are doing the bare minimum to just not be fired. I'm 9 years in at the same company busting my ass thinking that would be the case. Turns out they somehow can afford all kinds of nice stuff for themselves but can't find the money to give me a raise. I'm currently in the bottom 25% of my pay range for the area and title. I'm looking to get out ASAP. Every promise they have made has been tossed in the trash. Story 20. Doctor. In the past, it used to be a very high-paying job. These days, it's not so much. I still make a good living, but in low COL areas, family docs make $100K, and specialists make $250K. A partner of mine made $150K in the 70s when he started. He was still making $150K in 2010. My husband is a retired psychiatrist. He worked very hard and made good money, but in his specialty, docs are paid by the hour, not by the procedure. He is/was good at it too. He won't tell me a thing, and that is how it should be, and I never got to see him work. Story 21. Civil engineer and planner. I have 15 years in the field. I have master's degrees in both community development and planning, bachelor's in engineering with a minor in GIS. I could make significantly more if I went private sector. However, I work to provide infrastructure to undeserved communities and wouldn't leave this job for anything right now. I'm also a part-time firefighter, so I guess that would count towards my income as well, but it's not much, a couple of $100s in a busy month. It's not really a job someone does for the money. I get to drive fire trucks fast with sirens, and that's all the pay I need. Story 22. I own multiple companies, all home industry related. Property maintenance for other out-of-state landlords, local handyman, K&B remodeling, whole house rehab/resell. We do not flip, and my Airbnb/Vrbo properties. I really only achieved this status due to my wife dying in 2020. She was an EMT with 2 high-dollar life insurance policies, one personal and the other through her work. I poured all of that money and energy into my companies so that I could avoid feeling. Together, the companies make between $200 and $250K per month, depending on season and demand. I keep 10% as my knocking around money. Everything else is wrapped up in business expenses. I pay everyone quite well, by their own standards. I spend about 15 hours each month looking at the books, and that's it. My people run everything, and as long as they do, I'm happy sharing the profits with them, especially since they are considered business expenses. What's the weirdest thing a complete stranger has said to you? I'm a server, and as I dropped off the check to one of my tables, I said, "Have a great rest of your day," like I always do. And the guy looked at me dead in the eye and said, "You don't give a crap about me," then left me a 40% tip. Such a weird moment. I work at a restaurant. I brought a guy his coffee, and he said, "Oh, bless you, sir. May your birth control method never fail." Don't worry, sir. My high school health teacher assured me that abstinence has a 100% success rate. When me and my cousin were about 10, we were walking around Walmart. We saw a lady with dreadlocks, and my cousin asked how to get hair like that. She told us that we have to wear a KFC bucket on our heads for 2 months. I was living with 3 roommates, and our toilet needed fixing one day. The landlords came by, and we showed them to the bathroom with the 2 plumbers they had brought. There were at least 6 people in this room, and one of the plumbers looked at only me and started speaking Russian to me. I don't speak Russian. He then says in English, "Oh, you don't speak Russian?" I replied, "No." He gave me a look and then went about his plumbing business. Okay, that was odd. Months later, maybe even a year later or more, I was in a shop at a mall and had been discussing some items with a sales clerk. We'd been talking for some time and she had an accent that sounded Russian. I have an American accent. Toward the end of our conversation, she asks, "Have you ever been to Russia?" I reply, "No." Okay, not weird, as she's from Russia, but then she says, "There's someone in Russia who looks just like you." I'm mildly convinced I'm a sleeper agent or that I have a Russian twin. I did inquire a little further with the clerk, and it did not appear to be a celebrity she was talking about, just a girl in Russia who looked just like me. I may, in fact, look Russian. I am not aware of any Russian heritage, though. I got mugged once in Glasgow as a young teenager. This is how the conversation went. "I'm going to need whatever money you have on you, kid." I got a £20 note, but needed to get the train home. "How much is your ticket?" "About 8 or 9. "Oh, that's alright, I've got change." He took my 20 and gave me the 10 back. Not a bad mugging by any means. At a gas station at 2 a.m., a guy yells, "Hey!" really loud. I think, oh crap, I'm about to get mugged. "Hey!" he shouts again. I look at him, and he continues, "Were you aware that some guitar player died?" "No." He then proceeds to have a wasted conversation about him with me. After what I thought was an amicable conversation, he mugged me. I've posted this before, but a guy came up to me once and asked if I had a light for a smoke. Before I get a chance to respond, he says, "No, wait, you're too fat to smoke," and walked away. 2 guys came up to me while I was gassing up my car and asked, "Hey, do you know what the plastic tip of a shoelace is called?" I did, and said, "It's called an aglet." One turns to the other and says, "See, I told you." They went inside. I finished putting gas in my car, and just as I'm about to leave, the guy stops me, gives me a Snickers bar, and leaves. A middle-aged man approached 12-year-old me and a friend, told us, "You're going to be rich one day," and passed us each a coin. My friend got 50 pence. I got 25 Eastern Caribbean dollar cents. I was at college, and this husky guy with an untrimmed neckbeard asked me what time it was. I politely told him what it was, even giving a smile, and he stuck his hand out to me. Confused, I shook his hand, but he seemed confused, almost startled, as he made these weird hand gestures. He whispered, "Oh crap, you don't know the handshake," before leaving with a worried look on his face. Old man, "What do you call that hair color?" Me, "Red, I guess." Old man leaning over, stroking my hair. "I like strawberries. Let's call it strawberry." Ha! When I was a kid, I was walking around and found a pile of broken windshield glass. I don't know if I believed it or not, but I yelled out, "Whoa, I just found diamonds!" And some extremely old man came from a nearby corner and said, "Hand him over." The look on his face when he saw me kneeling over shattered windshield glass was priceless. An older woman walked up calmly and quietly and said, "You remind me of my dead son," which isn't super weird. Grief makes people vulnerable onto themselves. Then, however, she laughed and said, "Oh no, I'm thinking of someone else. What even is your brain right now?" They started stroking my hair, which was super curly, and whispered, "I'd sell my soul for your hair." This was in the grocery store parking lot when I was 10. I was doing my grocery shopping and grabbed some mee goreng noodles off the shelf. A voice piped up behind me, "Don't get those. They're genetically modified. They'll mess up and give you Alzheimer's." Me, "Whoa, what?" Weird stranger, "It's true. My mom had Alzheimer's and I stopped her eating them, and now she doesn't have it anymore." Me, "They're just noodles, mate. I'll be okay." Weird stranger, "You gotta learn to trust your gut. I'm Russian, I'm psychic, and I'm 50 years old. I know these things." At this point, I looked him straight in the eye and put 2 packs of noodles into my trolley before walking away. I'm not gonna let some frickin' Russian psychic push me around. I was catching the bus home after work late one night. It was about a half-an-hour bus ride, and I had fallen into a deep sleep. I woke up suddenly thinking I had missed my stop when the guy sitting next to me said, "Don't worry, this isn't your stop. You get off at the next one." I'd never seen this guy in my life, and he knew exactly what bus stop I needed to get off at. I was walking my dog and came across a younger guy, maybe 23 or 24, looking at his phone. He was in the middle of the block, and I'd never seen him before. He struck me as odd from a distance because he just looked out of place, like maybe he was lost. Anyway, I get about 5 feet away and he looks up from his phone like I startled him. He stares at me like he thinks he knows me. I stare back. He slowly raises his hand up from his side in a slow arc and points directly at me. His mouth opens. He shouts, I'm gonna slam! I think I said, or at least, what the hell? Then he ran between two houses and jumped over a fence. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he was saying. My wife and I, both 24, were waiting for an elevator. The door opens and there was one dude in there, also going down. We smile to acknowledge him and step into the elevator. He immediately steps out right after. He turns around, looks at us and says, I don't deal with kids. And the doors close and we ride down alone. People are weird. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were one of the machines. I was sitting at a bus stop when I heard some murmuring behind me. I thought it was some creepy guy being a creep, so I decided to confront him, asking him to repeat himself. He says much more clearly and looking at me straight in the eyes, I study the ways of life and I'd like to tell you that everything will go well for you. And then he went on his way. I smiled all big, thanked him and told him to have a wonderful day. It was a strange yet pleasant encounter. I drive a Honda Element. Got out of the car to go into the grocery store and a stranger says, guess you're out of your element now. As a child, I was walking through New York with my parents. This complete stranger came up to me and asked which of my parents I preferred. Happened a couple of years ago, at a bar with some friends. This old lady comes up and tells me, you look like the kind of guy that would have babies with my granddaughter. Don't know if that's an insult or a compliment. My sister is 10 years younger than me, and I get regularly told that my daughter looks just like me. Half the time, my mom is actually with us when people tell me this. Buying cat food at PetSmart. Cashier hands me the receipt and says, enjoy your meal. Someone yelled, sausage supper, at me as they drove past. This was maybe 20 years ago, and I still think about it maybe once every 6 months. It still baffles me. There was an off-kilter man around the leisure center near me when I was in my low teens. He got booted for trying to wrestle my popcorn away from me. As they were escorting him out, he said, he's too young. You gotta be 300 before you're allowed to eat popcorn. I hope his loved ones helped him. My aunt worked in a blood bank at the front desk. One day, an older gentleman walked in, stared at her for a second, pulled out a book about the care and feeding of parakeets and just said, parakeets, in a sing-songy voice, and turned and walked back out again. My little brother and I were walking through the suburb to get to the post office and collect a package. When we were almost all the way there, a tall bearded man with wild hair and a dirty pink onesie put himself between the post office and us. He was maybe 50 and looked like a typical, I've been an alcoholic my whole life kind of person. In his arms, he held a wild hare that he somehow had caught. He said to us, do you see this bunny? Yeah? And with the most sad voice I have ever heard, he said, isn't life just completely worth it? And then he walked on. I've had weird things before, but this one is one of the top 3 ones for sure. Boarded a bus a few years ago wearing an Iron Maiden shirt. I think it had a few burning skulls and a scarecrow with a scythe. And a man with a thick Nigerian accent cried, witchcraft, witchcraft, with what seemed to be genuine terror before disembarking. Not to me, but to my sister. She has some kind of weirdo magnet because random people always say crazy stuff to her. Anyway, she was walking on the street going to work and a dude approaches her and says, hey lady, could I have some of your blood, please? In the most natural way. Oh god, it reminds me of what I said to someone. I once was in the local corner shop with a few friends when I saw someone dressed exactly the same as one of my friends buying a sandwich. As he walks to the door, I'm like, what sandwich you got there, mate? He looks at me and I'm like, ah, crap, that's not my friend. I was walking in a corridor at Walmart, and a can fell out of a pile I was passing by without breaking stride or looking. I caught the can midair and put it back. A dude behind me saw it and told me, you have a strong soul. Still not sure what that means. One time, I was informed by a stranger that I had a lovely purple aura. I've had several people do that to me. The weirdest part is it's always a green aura and a gold aura around my feet, or gold aura and green around my feet. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but oddly about 5 to 6 people have all told me nearly the same thing.
One of the weirdest yet most interesting moments we had with a stranger was this time a friend of mine, Mike, and I were standing outside of a liquor store. Both of us were 20 years old at the time, so we were unable to buy alcohol but could freely smoke cigarettes. Our other friend, Zach, who was 21 and met Mike his first year at college, was in the store buying us whiskey for the night because he was such a nice guy. Zach doesn't really drink, so he was just doing us a favor. It was cold. Typical Chicago winter, but that night actually wasn't that bad. Mike and I had gone in before Zach so I could get a pack of cigarettes, and Mike got a $2 scratch lottery ticket. We waited patiently outside, each indulging a vice. Then I noticed someone approaching us. I have lived in Chicago long enough to recognize a homeless person, and I've heard pretty much all the stories. I was instantly cynical, but I had never been more wrong in my life. I at least expected him to ask me for a cigarette, but the first words out of his mouth were, "Hey gentlemen, how are you doing?" I was honestly taken aback, but we both said almost in unison, "Good," and commented about how nice it was that night. With a laugh and a friendly smile, he said, "Yeah, me too. Y'all got any plans?" We told him we were going to meet up with some friends after our buddy came out of the store. He smiled again and said, "Well, y'all be safe now. I got a joint from the Mexicans at the car shop. I'm gonna go to my spot in the alley, smoke, and put out a sign. The one when I don't want anybody around. Do not disturb the rat in the hole. They know this is the condominium, and leave me alone." Mike and I both looked at each other right after he said that. We both love writing and instantly recognized the beauty of what he had just said. To this day, I have yet to hear a more sincere poetic phrase, and it stuck with me. Do not disturb the rat in the hole. I offered him a cigarette, but he declined. All he seemed to want was a conversation, a simple exchange of words. At the time, I was jealous of his indifference to a very, very beautiful phrase he coined. Do not disturb the rat in the hole. Zach came out from the store shortly after, and we told him we had to go. We shook hands with the man, and as we were walking away, we heard him shout to us, "Happy New Year!" I can never forget that guy, and do not disturb the rat in the hole. It was New Year's Day in the new millennium. I was 9 and my parents took me to Spain for the new year. On New Year's Day, I noticed in a car park a moped with an old-fashioned horn, like a clown horn that you squeeze, and for some reason was fascinated by it. A guy comes out of the payment office, notices me looking at his bike, unscrews the horn and gives it to me, says Happy New Year and wanders off. It probably wasn't his bike. Don't be scared, said to me by my new across-the-street neighbor. I was working in my garage installing a whole house water filter when he decided now would be a good time to introduce himself. As he was walking up, it dawned on me that he's actually sneaking up behind me, so he starts to think of the best way to get my attention while trying not to cause me to freak out. He concludes that don't be scared was the best option. You have beautiful eyes, which in itself isn't that weird, but quite a nice compliment, to which I awkwardly replied, "Thank you?" It was their response to this that was weird. What? Aren't you going to compliment mine? Awkward. I took a photo of a Chinese family in London. They asked me, and the father told me, "You'll be a good father." Once I returned the cell phone, my fiance couldn't stop laughing. Also, once, a hobo stopped me in the street and asked me, "Do you like Bob Dylan?" and then started singing something while walking away. I was in the supermarket. An older woman stood in front of the milk section, exactly where I wanted to go, and took her time looking at the milk and yogurt, etc. I waited patiently for her to clear the way to my favorite product. After a while, she turns around, looks at me, and says, "I hate milk. Can you imagine it comes from cows?" and walks away. Checking into a hotel with my wife on our honeymoon, we had this exchange with the front desk. Him, "Good morning, welcome to Sandals." Me, "Good morning, thanks, we're pretty excited to be here." Him, "How was the trip from Canada?" Me, "Pardon?" Him, "How was the trip from Canada?" Me, ... Him, "You are from Canada, right?" Me, "No, we are from the States." Him, "I just assumed that you were Canadian because of the hair." Me, "I'm sorry, what?" Him, "My apologies. I saw your hair and just assumed you were from Canada. Can I please have an ID and credit card for any incidentals?" Me, to my wife out of the corner of my mouth, "What the hell just happened?" "Who are you and what are you doing in my bed?" Outside a Subway, a homeless guy walks up. Guy, "What's going on?" Me, "Just waiting for my friends to get a sub." Guy, "What's really going on?" Me, "Seriously, just waiting for subs." Guy, "What's really going on?" "What's really going on though? There are 1,000 eyes watching us right now." If you had been born earlier, then you could have been a Polish general. It was a while ago, so I might be remembering the Polish part wrong, which would make sense since I'm not Polish and we were not in Poland. I was waiting at the train station and there was already a train there, but it wasn't mine. A woman arrived and stopped a few meters away from me. She started searching for something in her bag, and as she did this, she dropped a paper that she was holding, like a brown paper bag. As the paper drops on the floor, she looks at it and then looks at me and yells, "It's your fault! It's all your fault!" and runs to the train. I was on a train as a teenager with a friend of mine, and this little old lady came up to us and said, "Don't worry, you two have beautiful souls." Then she got off the train. We sat there for a few minutes just wondering, did that old lady just call us ugly? I was walking around the city with my girlfriend at the time when a random, presumably homeless man yelled out, "Hey young man! Hey young man! Young man! If you wrote a book, I would buy it. Thanks, I think." A person said, "You have a pretty mouth." Yes, I know that's a line from Deliverance. I have been asked twice by people I've never met if they could pet my legs. I have very hairy legs. I said yes both times. In a shoe store in a town where I knew no one, this woman walked up to me and said, "I just want to tell you he's really sorry for what he's done. He wants you to know how much he regrets how he's hurt you." I just looked at her, feeling very confused. She said she had to give me that message, and then turned around and walked away. A man stopped me in the street and said, "I was a pirate yesterday," and walked off. He looked lost, so I thought he was going to ask for directions, but he just came out with that, and off he went. I was pruning a tree in my front yard and couldn't reach one of the higher branches, so I jumped and grabbed the branch to pull it down. As I'm pulling the branch down to cut it, a car slows down and the driver yells out his window, "Leave the tree alone!" I'm still not sure what that was about. I was around 13 or 14 and an old man came up to my friends and me and shouted, "It is all history, this, but it is happening now." He is right, I guess, but it was very odd. I was at an ice rink and a homeless man was short a dime, so I covered him and he said, "Thanks, squirrel," to me. I still think about that almost 10 years later. While going home with friends after a party, about 2 or 3 a.m., a strange toothless guy told us that we were reincarnations of still living famous people. A weird old dude comes up to me in the grocery store and proceeds to tell me, "Never shave your mustache, only tweeze it." That is weird enough, but it gets weirder. I tell my friends this story about 2 weeks later, and he tells me about how the same dude had said that to him 2 months earlier in a whole different part of town. Haven't seen the dude since, and I still wonder why he is so set on getting people to tweeze their mustaches. Hey, that bus over there says you look like Neville from Harry Potter. I don't know what that means, but they wanted me to tell you. There's a bank on the bottom floor of the building I work in. There's one woman who is always there waiting for it to open. I'd say 3 to 4 days a week. Every time I walk past her, which is usually 3 mornings every week, she shouts, "Hi, nephew!" Then she explains to anyone nearby that I look just like her nephew. Sometimes I take the service elevator just to avoid her. I'm in a wheelchair, and once while I was sitting waiting for a friend to use a service station bathroom, a random woman walked right up to me and stood and simply asked, "Oh my God, what happened?" I was speechless for a good 10 seconds and then simply said, "I don't know you." Oh man, I've been waiting for this one. My girlfriend and I had just moved to a new neighborhood and decided to grab a bite of sushi. When the waitress brought out our order, she, clearly not speaking much English, extended her palm toward the purple chic lamp hanging from the ceiling and said, "The light shines upon the table," set the tray down and walked away. 4 years later, we still wonder WTF she meant by that. Some guy in a Walmart looked at me dead in the eye and said, "You are the bringer of darkness." Well, hell man, I wish I was, but here I am working in retail. The darkness brings itself to me. My friend and I were standing on a bridge around midnight, looking at the ducks below. An Asian guy came whizzing by on a bike and yelled, "Don't you jump in! I come after you!" When I was a barista in a small coffee shop, one day an old man in his late 70s came to the counter and said to me, "You'd only be a homewrecker for about a year. Then you'd be a rich widow." I asked some guy for directions, and he was going to the same way, so he walked with me for a couple of minutes before the road splits off. He began telling me about the antisocial behavior of kids in his area, and how they had the right idea just with the wrong people. What the hell? In a Pizza Hut with my 2 toddler-aged kids and 2 adult friends. A guy asks me how I would like it if he took a shotgun to my legs. He heard us talking about Star Fox and how the characters had metal legs because they volunteered for amputation to be able to resist higher Gs. I laughed because it seemed like a very specific detail of world building for a game very light in the story. He thought I was laughing at amputees. Had a brother who lost both legs in Vietnam and proceeded to threaten to shoot my legs off. I was walking through Target and I see a kid about 10 heelying around. He comes up and passes us, exclaiming, "Why walk when you can roll?" This was like a month ago. Last year, I was out celebrating my birthday with two of my brothers, who were both on leave. S, who was a Marine, and R, who was a sergeant in the Air Force. We decided to walk to another bar since it was pretty early still. We were on the second floor of this weird outdoor patio type joint, and they were walking ahead of me towards the stairs. I had my purse in one hand and a drink I was trying to finish in the other. Some random wasted guy came up behind me and literally threw his left arm around my shoulders while screaming, "I'm not going to hurt you," at the top of his lungs. Both of my brothers turned around and I could legit see the goddammit look in my youngest brother's eyes right before the creepy guy went sailing across the dance floor. Let us say Creeper was extremely lucky only two of my brothers were home for my birthday. The oldest brother, Jay, was deployed, Army, and the other one, Kay, was in rehab. I was walking down to Walmart when a dude just randomly came up to me and asked if I knew anyone who sold weed. A lot of people smoke weed where I'm at, but it just seemed odd to me, especially since we were near a Walmart of all places, and I really don't look like someone who would smoke weed. Once a guy on a bike kept circling around the park benches we were sitting on and finally asked us if we would sell him weed. He was for sure 100% safe as a cop. We had heard stories about them lurking around casually talking about weed. We told him no and he left. Luckily, we had finished right before he arrived and just kept our cool. I like to vomit up a little. What? You know, in the microwave? They probably said warm it instead of vomit, and you misheard them. What is a scientific fact that you know is true, but it still blows your mind that it's real? The T-Rex is closer in time to us than it was to the Stegosaurus. Dinosaurs were here for a very long time. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the opening of the first Pizza Hut than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramids. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian either, so maybe it's more appropriate to call her closer to the opening of a Little Caesars. There are colors that other species can see, but we can't. Damn, I really want to see a new color. I teach 5th grade. Their minds were blown when I told them the sun is a star. I think a couple of them wanted to fight me over it. The distances and sizes involved in astronomy. Stars thousands of times the size of the sun, objects millions of light years away. It's unfathomable. You can fit all of the planets in our solar system between us and the moon. Like, I understand the concept that I'm a sack of trillions of atoms interacting with each other through an incredibly complex system of molecules, but it still just feels like I'm sitting here doing nothing and browsing Reddit. Always blows my mind. There are roughly 7 times 10 to the 27th power atoms in the human body. That's more than a trillion trillions, or more than a billion billion billions. Lake Washakum, a lake I live on, lost about 3.5 feet of water from the start of May to the end of August last year. It's a 90-acre lake, so that's about 103 million gallons. That's about 860 million pounds of water, or about 430,000 tons of water. That's about 3,500 tons of water a day, 146 tons of water per hour. 82 pounds of water leaves my lake every second, almost entirely by evaporation in the summer. It's a really small lake. Most people call it a pond. The fact that DNA can make all these different forms of life out of just 4 bases, and every computer program ever written is made out of just 2. A lot of the power and variety comes from the hardware that runs it and interprets the data, which can't actually act on its own. But without the information, a computer would just be a lump of silicone, and a human would just be a lump of goo. For every grain of sand on every beach on Earth, there are over 10,000 stars in the known universe. There are more atoms in the amount of salt that can fit in one hand than there are stars that we can see. Things don't get cold, they just lose heat energy. Cold doesn't exist, it's just low heat. Also, technically, black doesn't exist either. Everybody here is so scientific, but I was thinking, wombats have cubed poop. Tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants were cultivated from the nightshade family of plants. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, and savoy are all cultivars of the same species, Brassica oleracea. The black mesh on the front of microwaves works by physically blocking the waves because the waves are so big they can't fit through the holes. Gödel's incompleteness theorem is up there for me. You can prove using only arithmetic that there are true statements about arithmetic that you cannot prove using arithmetic. The proof involves encoding statements about numbers into numbers, and then breaking the fourth wall to let one side of an equation represent facts and the other represent numbers. Reading the proof twists your head so much more than just reading the theorem. Pi is a number that goes on forever, but it's still less than 4. Most of what makes up your body, everything apart from some hydrogen, was once part of a star. 1. There are colors and lights my eyes cannot physically see due to not having the biological hardware needed to do so. 2. Each one of my eyes sees colors differently. 3. Sometimes I have mental input lag, and though I can see something quickly, my ability to react to it just as quickly is limited by my physical abilities. 4. I could simply die at any moment from a large number of random variables, and I might not even get to be able to acknowledge my death. 5. The most dangerous thing I do daily, by a very wide stretch, is drive a vehicle. Not so much a fact, but the general knowledge humans have about outer space is just amazing to me. I'm just a layperson, but I still have a wealth of knowledge about our solar system just from my basic schooling. Add to that my access to the internet, and the amount of information just anybody can get is simply astonishing. I don't think most people appreciate that as much as we should. The first time I knew that the internet would truly change the world was in July of 1994, when Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 crashed into Jupiter, and I could see the NASA images within a few minutes of it happening. It blew my mind when I realized that everything would be like that going forward. Late to the party, but the fact that you're never really touching anything, it doesn't so much as blow my mind as it does make me upset and uncomfortable. I'm going to die one day, and then what? The size of the universe is not only growing, the growth is accelerating, and many of the earliest galaxies have such a strong red shift that we needed to build the James Webb Space Telescope so that we can image them in infrared, since Hubble has reached the limit of what we can see at visible wavelengths. Quite literally, Hubble has reached the universal equivalent of draw distance in a video game, and eventually James Webb will do the same thing, in the far infrared. At some point, we will stop seeing modern galaxies, and theoretically start seeing the early proto-universe, assuming James Webb is sensitive enough to detect it. Bonus mind-blowing fact, that observable distance is related to time. The farther away you look, the farther back in time you look. Luckily, we have satellites like the Cosmic Background Explorer, or COBE, that can image the moment the universe stopped being opaque, redshifted all the way into the microwave spectrum, and long before any galaxies were even thinking of coalescing. Not to diss James Webb, because it's pretty kick-ass and high resolution in addition to being able to see really far back in time. The fact that you can't go faster than the speed of light. That the majority of the oxygen on the planet comes from the plants in the ocean. A lot of me is just empty nothingness. I have seen more of the surface of the moon with my own eye than the surface of the Earth, just from really far away. How many asteroids are actually orbiting the sun and flying around Earth? It is crazy to think about. Radio waves. Totally get the science, but what the hell is that crap about? Like, music is transported on invisible lines that zap the sound into my car, and the dash shows words that tell me what the name of the song is, and what my ears absorb those lines, and I am jamming to music? What? That caterpillars turn completely to goo inside the chrysalis before turning into a butterfly. They basically break down totally, then become something new. It's wild. That's a common misconceived debunking of a misconception that's not actually a misconception. All the caterpillar's organs stay in roughly the same place. Imaginary numbers. And who came up with that name? They're almost challenging me not to believe in their existence. You should check out quaternions sometime. They're like imaginary numbers, but 3 times as imaginary. Oxford University is older than the Aztecs. Perhaps the fact that blows me away the most is the idea that the universe exists at all. Really think about it. Why is there a universe? How did the Big Bang start? And what is outside if there is the universe? This fact scares me more than death. All the planets in the solar system fit between Earth and the Moon, only if you align them with their poles, or take the largest Moon/Earth distance instead of the average one. We are hurling through space at an amazing speed, and we don't even feel it. Not only is the Earth revolving on its axis, but it is also moving around the Sun, and the sun is moving within the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is moving through the universe, but we don't feel a thing. Don't know about the Milky Way moving around the universe, but the sun is traveling about 500,000 miles per hour around the galaxy. We've literally flown 1 million miles between the time you posted your message and I read it. This would be really weird with time travel. If you traveled 100 years back in time, you would also have to travel to another place in the universe to end up on the same place on Earth. That eventually all of the energy in the universe will be evenly dispersed and will be as close as possible to absolute zero, and nothing will be able to happen pretty much. I think the Big Rip theory is more terrifying than heat death. The universe is not only expanding, it's expanding at every point at a growing rate, meaning that the space between the nucleus and the electrons is, you guessed it, also expanding, but the atomic force pulls the electrons back in line faster than they are getting pushed back, for now. The Big Rip states that there will be a point, because of the increasing expansion rate, that the atomic force will be too weak to counteract the expansion, so every atom, every group of particles in existence, will be ripped apart. And because the expansion will be faster than light, at this point every particle will be doomed to wander the universe alone, never grouping up again. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way, about 10 times more really. That there's a spooky, scary skeleton inside me right now. Consciousness. One day you're just floating in warm liquid without a care in the world. A few weeks later, you're aware of things and taking careful notes about what happens to you in case it becomes important later. It seems if I raise my voice loud enough, they'll come back into the room and give me food. At what instant do you pass from non-conscious to conscious? And what are you doing while you're not conscious? Do your thoughts count as thoughts, or are they just bright stripes and shapes caused by bursts of electricity in your brain? When do you have your first bona fide thought? What is a thought? My first memory was something weird. I remember wandering into the living room after breakfast and stopping dead in my tracks at the realization that I was alive. It felt like the very first thing. From then on, it has been a constant stream of memories forming. It's like the transition from animal to human. I described the house to my mom, and she says that I had to have been 2 years old. That every time you shuffle a deck of cards, it is statistically more likely that this new combination has never been shuffled by anyone in history. Not just yourself. You can crunch the numbers and it adds up, but it's just so crazy when you have those 52 cards in your hands. How can this be true? If we were right now in another place, about 65 million light years from Earth or something like that, using a special instrument, we could see dinosaurs. Maybe that's why we haven't been contacted by life on other planets, because they all think we are a bunch of dinosaurs. Or they've already been and discovered no intelligent life. Or maybe we are the first intelligent life to form. Clouds in general blow my mind. Do you know how many different types of clouds there are? Like at least 5. But the fact that a mass of water vapor can change into different forms is just crazy. Also the fact that they are giant floaty things in the sky that we're all just cool with. That those very same clusters of moisture and heat create some of the most destructive and deadly weather in the world, or that they create enough energy to turn air lethal, capable of whipping debris up to speeds of over 250 miles per hour that are capable of destroying homes and lives like nothing, or that the amount of energy harnessed in a single thunderhead per minute is more than we, all of humanity, can produce in a year, or that lightning is plasma created by the rubbing and friction of particles inside clouds. If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding to? What is past the universe that it is expanding to? I understand basically that it is just nothingness, but trying to comprehend nothingness is impossible. Just try. How often body cells are being replaced? Your stomach cells every 2 to 9 days. Your skin every 10 to 30 days. Lungs every 8 days. Makes you think how many times you've been made over. You can boil water by simple vacuum pressure alone. One weird fact about humans is that people with brown eyes actually have blue eyes under a top layer of brown pigment. There's some researcher who developed a laser that can zap that top layer of brown pigment so it drains from your eyes, hence leaving your eyes blue. The fact that we live on a floating rock in space. The brain named itself. That viruses pretty much hijack cells and turn them into virus-making factories that make different parts of the virus in different places of the cell. Like devious little robot aliens trying to kill us all. Viruses scare the hell out of me. That light can be used to make a sail in outer space. Thanks, physics textbook. It's the only thing I'll ever remember from this. Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born in the same year, 1929. Betty White was born 7 years before Anne Frank. If you have 2 legs, you have more than the average amount of legs. That airplanes function. Like, dude, we can fly. You can light farts on fire. Black holes give me legit anxiety to think about. Remember, black holes don't have some magic gravity that sucks everything else in. Gravity is still gravity. If our sun were replaced with a black hole of the same mass instantaneously, we would not get sucked into it. We'd all die for other reasons, but not black hole shenanigans. Adult women cannot throw things as far as adult men as a result of an evolutionary mechanism. When men throw something, they instinctively lock their wrists and break it properly to generate more force. Women don't have any of this wrist action when throwing. It is suggested that this innate behavior in males is a heritable trait from their ancestors who used to hunt for food. I don't know if someone posted this already, but the idea that some of the stars you are seeing in the sky no longer exist and haven't for a long time. It's just that their light is taking so long to reach your eyes, you're literally seeing the past. My intro to Astro professor was fond of using Star Wars examples. To illustrate distance, he used the asteroid field sequence from Empire, revealing the very exciting fact that real asteroids in asteroid belts are far apart, and it's so dark out there that there's not only any chance of a collision, but if you were standing in one, you wouldn't even see the others. You'd just think that you were a tiny part of a space rock. Want to know how many seconds it takes for you to drive a mile at a certain speed? Just take 3,600 and divide it by your miles per hour. This works with kilometers and kilometers per hour too. However, as you increase your speed, it doesn't decrease the time it takes to go a mile linearly. At 10 miles per hour, it takes 6 minutes. At 15 miles per hour, it takes 4 minutes. At 20 miles per hour, it takes 3. At 30 miles per hour, it takes 2 minutes. And at 60 miles per hour, it takes 1 minute. So you see more change in the time needed to go a mile at lower speeds than higher speeds. At 75 miles per hour, it takes 48 seconds, and at 80 miles per hour, it takes 45 seconds. That means that you would have to go 20 miles going a constant 80 miles per hour instead of 75 miles per hour just to shave 1 minute off your trip. So slow down. It's literally not worth it. The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer, so they look the same size. It's insane. Hydrogen left alone in a large enough quantity for a sufficient length of time will gain sentience. A human red blood cell completes a circuit of the whole body in about 60 seconds. There is little difference between the atoms in your fingertips and the surrounding air. Our heart is beating from before we are born to the day we die, non-stop all the time. Quantum tunneling. Basically, if you toss a golf ball at a brick wall, you would expect it to bounce off the wall, but there's a very, very tiny chance that the golf ball will just end up on the other side of the wall. I can't really say it will go through the wall, and I can't really say how long it will take to get there. The math actually ends up giving you an imaginary number when you calculate the time. But anyway, the odds that it would happen are so small that you would have to keep doing it over and over again for many, many times longer than the age of the universe to have any reasonable chance of seeing it happen. When you scale down to the size of electrons, though, there are just so many of them that you don't have to keep trying for very long. Also, the probability of popping through that wall increases at smaller sizes. So if you put a wall between 2 electrodes and bounce some electrons off that wall, once in a while one will pop through the wall with quantum tunneling. And because an electron that moves from one side of the wall to the other means that you have a measurable electric current, we can measure it. We can reliably predict the number of electrons that will magically pop through that wall and measure the current caused by it. This is the main idea behind how flash memory sticks work. That swans can be gay. That you actually have a 0.2 to 0.3 second lag on everything you perceive. Your brain just tricks you into thinking you don't. Anthropic coincidences. The infinitesimally small cause and effect that led to the creation of the human race, let alone your own life. The average person has 1 fallopian tube. Sleep. We do it about 1/3 of our life, and one of the best explanations is because we get tired. That we have to take on faith that we exist. This one is what I used to screw with my head when I feel too sane. Everything we perceive is measured by our senses and delivered to our brains. We know this. However, if something were able to completely simulate the signals our nerves send to our brain, we wouldn't be able to tell. Or even more worrisome, if something had always been simulating signals to our brain, we would never be any wiser, because we'd never have had any real sensory input compared to it. Basically, our entire perception of reality is taken on faith that we are receiving data from our sensory organs. Similarly, we have no way to prove our memories are real. Not ultimately. We can verify them with things we look up, but if those records could somehow be created, we have no way to show whether they are real or not real. Basically, we have no surefire way to be certain existence didn't start at this very moment, every moment. I got a couple. 1, we know more about outer space than we do our own oceans, and 2, we are either alone in the universe or we are not. However, both are equally as terrifying. That there is a point at which space just ends. I'm so curious what would happen if you got that far. That boundary is always getting farther away, yes, but that doesn't mean it's not there. That the act of observing electrons on the quantum level changes the way that they behave. 1. There is a real probability that we can calculate that all of the air in a given room will suddenly all rush into one corner all at once and then come shooting back out to refill the space. 2. At the most basic quantum level that we have been able to test so far, everything in the universe is made up of waves and probability fields. There are even particles that literally pop in and out of existence and follow no observable patterns of behavior or interaction. 3. We humans are made of the same matter as everything else. We are part of the universe, so when we experience life in this universe, we are the universe experiencing itself. That we are within a solar system within a galaxy that is just one of over 100 billion galaxies. Of all the varieties and differences in breeds of dogs, they are still only one species. More so, wolves and dogs are interbred. Huskies are wolves and dogs. Chow chows are odd. They have black saliva. There's enough water in Lake Superior to cover the entire landmass of North and South America to a depth of 1 foot. The pool on board the Titanic is still full after all these years. How can I make a post like this crossing the barriers of time and space and sharing with millions of unknown people? It blows my mind. Peregrine falcons fly so fast that the airflow around their nostrils would hit their brain and knock them unconscious if it weren't for the deflecting cones they have evolved. Most of the comments are about physics, so I'll do biology. The fact that many fungus have more than just one sex gender. There is male, female, A, B, C, D, and they can reproduce A times B, male times C, female times A, etc., and you get different results. And if there is nothing to reproduce with, they go for asexual reproduction until there is someone to mate with. Fungi are crazy. Time slows near supermassive objects and near the speed of light. My brain can't conceive of the implications of time being changed in any way. Forget supermassive objects. The further from gravity you are, time changes. So for those of us living in apartments or working in high-rises, time is actually moving slower for those of us walking on the street. The difference is extremely minuscule and you'll never notice it, but it's there. The existence of microscopic wasps smaller than an amoeba. Megaphragma mimerapen. I don't know whether to be scared or intrigued. The existence of narwhals. Human beings have walked on the surface of the moon and come back safely. Even crazier, they accomplished this only 66 years after the first flight. We went from not being able to fly to landing on the surface of the moon and coming back safely in 66 years. That's astounding. An oldie but a goodie, the summit of Mount Everest is marine limestone. How we built a machine able to take 2 protons, accelerate them to almost the speed of light, hit them with each other, and watch what will happen. While we have 3 cones to see color, roughly red, green, and blue, some people have a 4th cone that allows them to see a broader spectrum of color. That human beings actually created antimatter, not retrieved from space or found, but created. There are an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2, but none of them are 3. That the time between first flight and dropping an atomic bomb is less than 50 years. Theory of relativity. The past isn't gone and the future isn't yet to be. They are all equally real and material. We only experience time because our consciousness is the product of time-bound electrochemical interactions in our brain, which means past, present, and even future are all equally real and present, and time as we know it is nothing more than an illusion. Procreating. I have 2 kids and they both grew inside my tummy, and now they are living, breathing, walking, talking human beings. And the fact that I was once in my mom's tummy and now I'm an adult, it's crazy. It continues to blow my mind. The results of the double-slit experiment have to be the most counterintuitive revelations in physics, which in itself is a field riddled with counterintuitive revelations. Magenta is only the interpretation of both the red and blue cones firing simultaneously. It physically does not exist. There is no magenta frequency of light. Race car spelled backwards is race car. There have been a few on the passage of time, but I haven't seen this particular one yet. The fact that time is relatively faster the older that you are. Imagine it like this. At 1 year old, 1 year is your whole life. That's a long time, but fast forward to 10 years old, now 1 year nearly isn't as long, as it's only 1/10 of your life. Fast forward to 50, now 1 year is only 1/50th of your life, which now doesn't seem long at all, and 25 years is half your life, and starts to not seem long either. A year for me as a 19-year-old could seem like a totally different thing than a year for you would be. Always think about this. The fact that I'm going to die one day, and it's going to be just like it was before I was conceived. That the universe is limitless. Even if you were traveling on a particle that was created just after the Big Bang and reaching further away than anything else, beyond that, there is nothing. Not nothing as an empty space, but space and time does not even exist there. The universe is creating its own space and time. If I remember correctly, time did not exist before the Big Bang because everything was exactly the same. Nothing ever changed. Suddenly, Big Bang. Then things are different from one moment to the next. Not a fact, but I think it is sad that other life exists and that we may never meet them due to the distance between us. There was a point when I was the youngest person on Earth. When you are exactly half the age of your mother, that is the age that they were when they had you. It's impossible to actually touch something. The sensation we perceive as touching is actually just electrons repelling each other, meaning they can't actually touch. That the Sun comprises more than 99% of all matter in the solar system, and Jupiter is about 95% of the remainder. We are a cosmic rounding error. This isn't quite true. I just checked, and Jupiter is not even 4 times as massive as Saturn alone, so it can't possibly account for 95% excluding the Sun. Looks more like 60% at most. If you could fold a paper in 280 times, it would be as wide as a galaxy. I wouldn't say it as 100% fact because dates and archaeology are messy, but there is proof that there were early human species for roughly 2.5 million years. Modern humans, or Homo sapiens, have hardly been around for 200,000 and have been anatomically similar to today's humans for only 75,000 years. Peanuts are neither pea or a nut. Empty space boils with particles popping into and out of existence. Electrons don't rotate around protons like mini planets around a sun. They kind of manifest in a probability cloud. Particles have spin, but what is spinning? Magnetic lines of force. They're like ripples in the what? That there are approximately 100 trillion bacteria cells in our body. This makes up about 90% of us. So what are we? The 10% human or the bacteria? What TV show moment made you think enough and switch the show off forever? I'm done when shows introduce babies. I'm not anti-baby per se, it's just done so poorly so often. Either it's a plot device for one season and then the baby is just magically never around and the parents continue as if their life hasn't changed at all, or the parents become caricatures of, OMG, babies are so hard. Of the shows I can think of off the top of my head, I think Friends did it best. The Walking Dead is so bad for this. That baby was born like 3 seasons ago, and it's never been an issue for them. They show it once every season to remind us it exists, but then it gets ignored. When Dr. Drake Ramery fell down the elevator shaft in Days of Our Lives, I heard the writers did that just to spite the actor because they didn't like an interview he did with the Soap Opera Digest. I did like the season in which he came back as a white woman. Here's an oldie. The episode of ER when Dr. Romano catches a resident physician smoking weed, but never reports him because a helicopter explodes and falls on him. Oh my goodness, that is hysterical. I forgot all about that until this very moment. Remembered the helicopter crash, but forgot the resident weed incident. when Dexter's sister screwed a guy literally minutes after cleaning up the blood of her brother's dead wife, in the same room no less. Wow, Dexter's lab got darker than I thought. Dee Dee is ice cold. Heroes. Somewhere near the end of Season 1 or the beginning of Season 2, they went back in time and changed the entire history and made the entire first season completely useless. It felt like I wasted my time watching the first season after that. Season 1 was so incredible and well done. I feel like the writers gave up halfway through Season 2. They literally had to stop writing because of the Writers Guild strike that year. Heroes got it the worst, as they tried to edit what they had into something, and it was a bad something. So you're sorta right. Deadliest Warrior when they did the zombies versus vampire episode. Then again, it was also the last episode. Yeah, the last season was garbage. They ran out of ideas and started doing historical figures, which is cool, but with the whole X Factor thing, it was a hot mess. Also, they fired one of the hosts for lying about his resume, and I didn't like his replacement nearly as much. In the 80s to 90s sitcoms, pretty much any time a sassy new younger sibling is introduced, yep, they're out of material. Time to move on. By that logic, Fresh Prince was doomed since episode 1. Prison Break at the end of season 2. When they didn't get on the boat, I just pretended that they did and stopped watching. Much better to show that way. So in the second season of Prison Break, they're already broken out of prison, but the name works once you realize that society is a prison, Gintama. This comment has convinced me to watch Gintama. I don't know why, having seen so many great gifs of the show and was still on the fence, but this made me laugh hard. Guess I know what I'll be doing after the finals are over. My wife and I used to really like Supernatural. I thought it was cool. Two brothers driving the US, slaying monsters and putting spirits to rest and helping people. I really liked when an occasional ghost story would pop up. The show's structure was that of a monster of the week, lightly tied together by the overarching story that while doing these things, they were traveling to find their father. Then it became all about angels and demons. All the time. Every episode. Surprise, demons are bad and angels are worse. Although it gave us Castiel, who at least started as an interesting character. Plus, the brothers would constantly assure each other, I won't do X and Y, and then go out and do exactly that, over and over and over again. Also watched NCIS for several seasons. It just got repetitive. Occasionally, a character would die, be replaced, and they'd go about their predictable pattern. How I Met Your Mother just drug on and on as well. I think we stopped watching the season before Mother was finally introduced. Kinda like how X-Files went from being Monster of the Week to all aliens all the time. It never did that. I always wanted more aliens episodes. Once Upon a Time. No one really dies. Ever. Simple problems that could be resolved through communication instead become huge issues. Killing the bad guy and solving everyone's issues? Nah, let's drag this out for some reason that really isn't clear. The most freeing moment of my life was the moment when I said to myself, I never have to watch this again. I don't remember what pushed me over the edge exactly, and sometimes I still miss season 1, but man, that show started to suck hard. I constantly hate this show, but season 1 is still one of the best seasons of any fantasy live-action show I've ever seen, and Mr. Gold is one of my favorite fictional characters, period. I can pinpoint my dropping point to approximately season 2 episode 10 or 11-ish, when it started getting soap opera-ish with the whole Hook subplot and Regina's mom subplot. The whole thing was just subplots, and every episode introduced a new character with a new subplot. Some characters only appearing for one episode and then disappearing. Don't even get me started on the fact that they dropped the storybook aspect and just started throwing in every Disney character they could. Apparently after I left, they added Cruella de Vil and Elsa. Sheesh. When Fonzie water skied over a shark. Oh, is that where Jump the Shark came from? When they killed off Rita in Dexter. After rewatching the show a few years later, I realized I made the right decision. The series should have ended at season 4, maybe with Dexter turning himself in, because that season answered the main overarching question. Can Dexter be a good husband, father, and a serial killer? No, he can't. The people he cares about ultimately suffer. Continuing the series after season 4 just made him look like an idiot who couldn't learn from his biggest mistake. Watched Bones for the first 2 seasons, and then they had an episode where everyone was driving Toyotas, and they were talking while driving about why they drive them. Made me off so much that I turned it off and never watched it again. You want to prominently display logos? Fine, but for the love of God, do not work in horrendously awkward dialogue about how great the product is. I distinctly remember when this started, and I knew network TV had died a little that day. I liked how Psych handled product placement. It was always two guys who really enjoyed their food, whether it was the name brand or not. Plus, in one episode, there was a guy trying to convince his boss that he should be the newspaper's new food critic by going on and on about how amazing Cheetos are. When Timmy Turner got a pet dog. For me, the show pretty much ended when Cosmo and Wanda had the baby. There might have been some good episodes after the baby, I don't really remember, but for the most part, that told me that they were out of material. If you pretend the episode where the baby is born is the series finale, it's actually kind of a nice ending. The show Falling Skies had a great premise with some good actors, a great budget, and some crappy-ass writing. I get that plot armor is always going to be a thing, but the main characters were invincible. It got to the point where one of the main characters was possessed by an alien, pressed his pistol to his head, and somehow managed to miss his head. It had been a long time coming to that show, but that moment was what made me give up on it. I almost quit through season 4. The plot with Mason's holy hybrid daughter was so bad, and they killed off two characters I liked with little to no emotional impact or build-up. Season 5, the final season, was moderately better. I honestly couldn't tell if it was good or not because I was still mad about the previous season. When the art style, voice acting, and animation changed suddenly for any cartoon. After a single episode of Brickleberry, when I suddenly realized that Family Guy might not be the worst animated show ever. You lasted the whole episode? Also, avoid Border Town and Pacific Heat, or as I call it, Bad Australian Archer. Pretty Little Liars. The sad part is, it took about 2 or 3 seasons longer than it should have. The final 10 episodes starts tonight, and I'm so glad to be done with it. I'm going to keep watching because I've gotten this far, but it just needs to be done. NCIS after the 3rd episode this season. Tony left, and I wanted to give it a chance, but they got 2 new agents who were like paper cutouts reciting lines rather than actual characters. McGee changed too. I don't like him anymore. The show lost most of what made it so good. Not just in Tony, but the whole team dynamic. I trailed off when it was evident Ziva was leaving. I've watched a few of this season's episodes, and I just find Wilmer Valderrama's character incredibly annoying. Jennifer Esposito is only slightly better, and I also do not like Svelte dedorkified McGee. Does anyone else think McGee is too thin now? He just looks so off-putting. Suits. After every episode became about Rachel and Mike's relationship. Only reason I still watch this show is because the fact that a good portion of the dialogue could be replaced by a soundboard never ceases to amuse me. God damn it, Mike. What the hell is this? That's BS and you know it. The cases just became props after the 2nd season or so. What are we going to do? Hands him a thin manila folder. Opens the folder, reads for 1 second, flips to page 2, reads for another second. Oh, this is good. And all is well until they get another manila folder in the next scene. The most recent episode of Sherlock. My whole family was in tears of laughter at that mess of an episode. We just couldn't believe that bullcrap had actually been written. I rage quit in the middle of this season's premiere. I loved Sherlock for the simple yet fascinating mysteries. The episode with the origin of the Sherlock hat is my favorite because it's so ordinary. Sherlock's friends and colleagues poking fun at him with the stupid-looking hat. I hate the stupid overarching season plot that has to be the most complicated thing ever. If I wanted that, I'd go watch Once Upon a Time or Supernatural. True Blood just got too awful. The books turned trash too. My moment was when Bill drank the special vampire blood and came back as the superpowered special vampire and was covered in blood. I can't remember exactly what happened, but that was my shut it down moment. Can't really believe I lasted that long. Suit of robot bees to steal the paralysis healing microchip in Arrow. I've heard season 5 got better, but yeah, that was the moment. This is the dumbest sounding event happening in a show I've ever heard, and I watch all sorts of bullcrap TV. The episodes before are actually worse. I loved the first season and a half or so of Scandal, then it just turned drama hurricane after drama hurricane. But I have loyalty issues when it comes to TV, so I kept watching. The final straw for me was when the president's girlfriend was kidnapped, and the ransom was that they'd kill her unless he started a war, so he did. I had long since grown tired of their toxic relationship, but that disgusted me so much that I had trouble looking at the character anymore. So I stopped watching and never looked back. Since season 2, it's been 4 seasons of just the same thing over and over and over again. Just the same people going away then popping back up again to do bad things and deliver monologues with awkward speaking cadences. The plane crash on Grey's Anatomy. I couldn't do it anymore after that. I quit when they killed off George. It boggles my mind every time I'm reminded that it's still going. I never watched past George's death either, because Blockbuster did not have the next season in stock yet. That tells you how long ago that was. CSI, when they generated audio from a video with no audio, using the vibrations of the plant leaves in the room. Iron Fist Episode 7. That was after Danny broke his oath of celibacy out of nowhere and without any explanation. It's like you've taken an oath to defeat the Hand, which you can't break, but you'll break another oath without even thinking about it. Your oaths mean nothing. I don't understand what happened. Iron Fist is the only MCU entry I consider to be genuinely terrible. Boring plot, crap, unlikable characters, and generic fight scenes. He brags about how he spent 15 years learning how to control his emotions, yet he has a bish fit every other episode. Whoever made it needs to stay away from the Defenders. Scott Buck has ruined Dexter and now Iron Fist. Will probably ruin the upcoming Inhuman show. I don't know why people keep hiring him. Arrow, when it felt like it should have been renamed Felicity. When they showed Oliver and Felicity living together in the burbs, screw it, I'm done with this. I honestly thought the show was over when he saved the city and he and Felicity drove off into the sunset. I kinda wish it had ended. Bones, when she quit being normal and went back to being weird. Scorpion after 2 or 3 episodes. So boring. Scandal, definitely by the time Liv was kidnapped, but long before that I was done. What the hell even is that show? Bones. I actually hated how they treated Sweet's death. He died, and they immediately did their best to make everyone move past it. Sweets was part of the show from day number I forget since I haven't watched in a while, and trying to make his death nothing but a shocking moment was pretty insulting. He wasn't there in the first 2 or 3 seasons. Otherwise, I agree. The first episode of Glee. The first season was actually pretty good. Massive drop-off after that though. I feel like most of the hate Glee gets on Reddit comes from people who never actually watched it and judge it from its appearance on being an annoying, uptight high school musical show. The first season was actually very funny. When it was first airing, I remember everybody in my school watching it and talking about it the next day. And the same thing was true with my older brother at his high school. When they introduced that African who can paint the future, my friend said, "Not again. I bet he dies this episode," after moving the plot along. As I was giving him crap for being wrong, in that little 10-second end clip, he was shown dead. Never watched Heroes again. I said in the first season that if Mohinder ever gets powers, I'm done. So that's when I quit. I should have gave up sooner. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia after the episode where, who am I kidding, it's still glorious and I love it. I was about to scream about that show being a golden god, a 5-star man, but then you fixed it. Thanks. Doctor Who's writers died with Matt Smith, but didn't regenerate. I like the new cast, but have never been so bored and uninterested in something I really liked before. I hear the latest season is starting off well, but I just don't give a crap anymore. Rick and Morty has thoroughly filled my sci-fi companion-based adventure hole now. There's nothing that frustrated me more than seeing Peter Capaldi wasted. While I think Moffat had his moments, he's too proud of his work. He creates something and then jerks himself off, doing less of what the show needs and more of what he wants. Pardon the rude wording. He'll often write really fantastic openings only to screw things up later. Thankfully, Capaldi's Heaven Sent, ironically written by Moffat, is a masterpiece. That's an episode where Capaldi is all alone, and it stands as a testament to how powerful of an actor he can be. I just hope this season keeps up the current trend. Again, ironically, the premiere of the Series 10 was pretty good, considering it was the introduction to a companion most people weren't sure of. House, when they got rid of the entire cast. Like when Kuttner killed himself so that he could go work for Obama. Funny story, my father is a congressional lawyer, and one day on the Hill he met the actor who played Kuttner. He started talking about his character and House in general. He was so far behind in the show he didn't know that his character had been dead for nearly 2 seasons. Firefly. After the first season, I just couldn't watch it anymore. My wife and I used to love Misfits. Season 3 opened without Nathan, which was a downer, and his replacement kind of sucked. Then the season ended with Simon going back in the past so that he can become the future Simon that was shown and killed earlier in the season. Lame. I actually kind of liked the time travel bit, but the loss of the funniest character was really terrible. First 10 minutes of Riverdale when Miss Grundy and Archie slept together. Nope. I grew up reading the Archie comics and this show would ruin it for me. WTF? So that show is Archie, but he slept with Grundy? Yep, Miss Grundy is young and attractive. She and Archie had a thing going. I never made it past 15 minutes. I got disgusted pretty quickly. The day I realized that The Big Bang Theory isn't funny, watched an entire episode without so much as a giggle. So, the very first episode? I really don't understand the appeal for this god-awful show. It had a charm to it at first, and it was cool to see more pop culture on TV back then when it started. But reality started to sink in on how contrived it was, and also having the characters pair off with attractive women was just bullcrap, especially Howard, as his character's failed sleazy behavior was only one of the saving graces for that show. Revenge. This show had one of the best first seasons that I've seen in a while, but it all went downhill from there. Tried returning to finish it because I had put in too much of my time, but ultimately decided I couldn't. Yep, I loved the first season as it was a sort of kind of rewrite of The Count of Monte Cristo, one of my favorite books ever. But then in the second season, ninjas? Family Guy, after the third time they did that annoying gag where Peter hits his shin on something, or the stupid overdone fights with Peter and the chicken. I won't lie, I love those fights. Vampire Diaries after they put Alana to sleep. Before then I loved it, but it just went downhill very quickly. See, I stopped watching when she turned. It was like every other human who became a vampire had their annoying trait replaced with something awesome. But Alana became even more whiny, which I hadn't thought possible, and I just couldn't do it. After the 11th Doctor died, I saw how off the rails the show was going, and I quit on Doctor Who. I quit with Amy, didn't like Clara, and Moffat made it too complicated for me. I really like Peter Capaldi as the Doctor, but the show turned into 85% Clara and they just made her so unbelievably annoying it completely killed the show. I watched every single episode as it aired since the reboot, and now just thinking about Doctor Who annoys me. The major retcon in Doctor Who, which showed that the Doctor hadn't actually destroyed Gallifrey, broke it for me. The contrast between that horrible act and the Doctor's kindness was half the reason I love that show. That's the ultimate Davis/Moffat difference, right? Davis had innocent people die all the time to show the dangers of the Doctor, while Moffat revives almost everyone who dies because he can't handle the Doctor being anything short of a hero. Even the angels he created in the Davis era don't actually kill people. Saving Gallifrey was just a crappy feel-good ending to the character-building darkness created since the reboot. Suits. Remember that show about an amazing lawyer and his prodigy? Just kidding, he's an investment banker now. I swear that only lasted for an episode. The OA wanted to turn it off the first time they started doing interpretive dance to channel their angel powers. Unfortunately, didn't turn it off until they used interpretive dance to stop a school shooter. It just kept getting trashier. Well, you just helped me dance away from that show. I hate everything, and I thought the OA had redeeming qualities. You desperately wanted these people to be saved, so when the interpretive dancing happens, it's like, heck it, let's do this. Flash. When his childhood friend and crush do a full 180 on being interested in him while in a committed relationship the moment he gets a girlfriend of his own and turns into a nasty stereotype of a meddling, jealous girl. I can tolerate a certain amount of shallow character writing for a dumb fun show, but holy crap. I was going to say The Flash, but because the main opposition in every season has been a speedster, what? Can't he work towards fighting Godzilla or seriously anything else? Why does the evilest person throughout each series always have to be a speedster? Write in a new OP character, please. Also, it bothers me that no one can have love except Barry and Iris. I'm sure this will change when the writers get tired and need some plot wedding drama, but every main character's love interest either left or died. Eureka. Spaceship got bored and made a pilot off of some dead skin cells. Returned to Earth. Oh wow, the dead skin cells came from the wife of the guy who made the ship. Also, apparently ships are designed and built by two people. Now his dead wife is back and she is helpless and doesn't know a lot, so her husband has to teach her to be human. The writers weren't even trying at that point. I really liked True Detective Season 1. Season 2 was just awful. I know it's a crime show, but I was so sick of everyone being so sullen and serious all the time, and every character had to have some painful backstory. Even this girl who was in one episode for like a minute. But I trudged through to the second to the last episode, and during the opening credits said out loud to myself, I don't care. And I shut it off. Not really a moment in the show, just a moment of clarity for me. I'm watching this show I hate to see how it ends, and I realize I don't care how it ends. Last Man on Earth. Towards the end of Season 1, when I realized Will Forte was going to make the show endlessly revolve around his insufferable character, despite other parts of the show having promise. I stopped watching after the third person showed up. Yeah, only the pilot of the series fulfilled the title of the show. I used to watch The Daily Show. Then Jon Stewart left and I gave Trevor a shot. Then abandoned the show because he was not funny. Simple as that. I even waited a while and then watched a couple of brand new segments last week. I barely even chuckled. The Daily Show Dream Team is off all doing their own things now, and the people left behind are not up to that standard, which to be fair is probably an impossible standard. But on the upside, I've gone from one show I love to 3. The last season of Top Gear on Netflix. I watched the first 5 minutes and the voice of that British Chris Evans forced me to stop. He's now left the show. It's growing in quality since he left, but will never be the same as it used to be. When they killed off Balefire in Once Upon a Time, it was the final piece of proof that the creators had no overarching plot and were happy to just appease the Tumblr masses. I still watched it for a bit after, but I'm no longer invested even a little. What's the strangest date you've ever been on? It's 2001, so VHS and chill at this girl's dorm room. My first time over there, and there is this giant bear on the bed. Like, got the softball in the milk jug at the carnival first try tier bear. It occupies 50% of the surface area. I say, whoa, how'd you score that bear? Her, I don't know. Me, what? Her, I don't know. A few minutes go by. Me, you don't know. Her, yeah, me. Okay, look, it's okay if it's from an ex. I don't care if you stole it. I'll believe almost anything you tell me at this point. But there is no way in hell you're going to tell me you don't know where that giant bear is from. I had a stuffed dinosaur a quarter of that size that I got when I was 6, and I could tell you every detail about how I got it. Her, well, good for you, but I don't know how I got it. Are you going to be able to let this go? Me, looks at bear, bear stares back. Eyes full of secrets. I don't think I can. Walk out. That's an interesting reason to turn down someone. This is one of the most appropriate reasons I've seen. Something is up here. She's full of secrets involving a massive stuffed bear. That's red flag number 1 in my book. Well, this one time I took my date to dinner at what seemed to be a front for some type of illicit activity. We had just moved to a new area, and we wanted to check out the local shops and restaurants. While we were wandering, we stumbled into a tiny Italian place. Back home, the small hole-in-the-wall restaurants always have the best food. So we were excited to give it a shot. Big curtains were covering the entry windows, so we had no idea what was inside until we trudged through the door. Inside, we were met with emptiness and silence. We both immediately thought the store was closed, and I spun around and searched for the store hours posted somewhere on the door. While I was looking, we heard a heavy thud as a young woman barked, "I'll be right with you." She appeared, greeted us confusingly, and asked us what she could do for us, which looking back is probably a red flag. But we were naive and hungry, so we said that we were there for dinner. She looked puzzled, but motioned us to follow her to a booth right by the entrance. She then disappeared into the back, and we heard a muffled conversation between our hostess and a man. The consensus was basically that they were not prepared for us or didn't know how to proceed. I asked my date if she wanted to split, but she insisted we stay for the story. The square-shaped balding man burst through the kitchen door with 2 glasses of water for us, and in a very loud and deep voice he explained that it was his birthday, and that we would eat what he felt like making us. We wholeheartedly agreed. We waited around 30 minutes and he again returned with 3 large bowls of spaghetti and meat sauce. He placed 2 bowls in front of us, and one next to me for himself. He sat with us and ate. We had a light and awkward conversation with him, and he kept asking us jokingly if we were cops or with the health board. He was incredibly nervous about us, so my date kept cracking corny puns or awful jokes because he would forcibly laugh at anything designed with humor. We talked about our lives, the cities we lived in, our pets. He had a teacup chihuahua named Princess, and his wife. He decided that we were good people and didn't charge us for the meal. We wished him a happy birthday. He hugged us and we went on our way. Easily the best spaghetti I've ever had in my life. The restaurant unfortunately no longer exists. Are you sure you didn't wander into an Italian couple's home? Yeah, sounds like some random person's house. I mean, geez, even a restaurant front should be prepped to make food. Otherwise, that's one of the worst fronts ever. Matched on Tinder with a guy who decided that a great story to tell in detail on our date was about the time he fisted a lady and tore her up so bad inside that she was bleeding profusely and had to go to the hospital to get stitches. After he was done telling the story, he told me he was glad I told him I was super squeamish, because now he wouldn't try to show me pictures of all the blood that he had saved on his phone. He also said that he had been on well over 100 Tinder dates and I had managed to land in his top 10. I never talked to him again. There's nothing like Ask Reddit topics to make a guy feel like an absolute steal. I was a waitress, and I had a table of 2 guys. One was very cute and flirting with me, and we exchanged numbers. He asked me out, and I said yes. I didn't really go out much, and he didn't tell me where we were going out or what we were doing. Me being young and dumb at the time thought that would be exciting. So he drives me a pretty good way away from my house, and we go to an elementary school. I was really confused. Apparently, he was a basketball coach, and they had a game that night. So at this point, I notice I have no reception on my phone, and I really wanted to leave, but I thought maybe we were going somewhere fun afterwards, so I gave up trying to call someone to rescue me. I sat and watched this game right next to this dude's mom. Yeah, this was going well. Finally, the game ended, and we go to get in the car. His friend from the restaurant gets in the front seat, making me sit in the back. I am super uncomfortable with this, and I ask what's going on. They basically tell me they want to run a train on me. Nope, screw that. Take me home now. I got lucky. They moped and took me home. I was terrified. That was horrible. Hey, if you want to run a train on a girl, let her have the front seat. It's only polite. A hot girl from class randomly walked into my dorm room. The door was normally open during the day. She was in the building visiting a friend and saw me playing the guitar, so she came in and started flirting. She asked me to meet her at a nearby bar that night at 10, so I agreed. I get there at 10 and she introduces me to her boyfriend. I finished my drink and went to the bar my friends were at. Actually, she wanted to show her boyfriend how a man should be. Met a girl online, talked it up, and while she seemed a bit immature, thought, heck, why not? She casually mentioned she really liked pigs. What she meant to say was she was obsessed with pigs. Obsessed. Go to one of the best restaurants in the area for a first date. Bad idea. Sometimes pictures are from someone 10 years prior, or the person hides things, etc. But that wasn't the problem. She looked just like her pictures, but I didn't even have to have seen her first, because everything else gave it away. She came in a giant t-shirt that had a sparkly pink pig on it. Earrings? Pig earrings. Bracelets? Yep, pig bracelets. I swear her dad might have been Homer Simpson. She had this headband on with a little pig on it. Her shoes? Yep, pigs on the front of her toes. But best of all, she had a giant, or at least it seemed giant, pink purse with the face of a pig on it. You could not stop seeing it once you did. And I'm sure everyone else in this nicer/classier restaurant saw it too. I felt overdressed with her, but underdressed with every other couple there. It was beyond embarrassing. For some reason, which I have to convince myself was politeness, not stupidity, we still had dinner. But Reddit, it was the fastest damn dinner I've ever had at a sit-down place. I practically blurted out something about how, oh, you really do like pigs, which she started giggling, or oinking, and going on about how everything she has is pig-themed. Then she wouldn't stop, and it became the dominant part of the conversation. There were a dozen other things that made it a train wreck, but these were the clinchers to a solid 0 out of 5 date. I remember afterwards consoling a friend of a friend because I had to tell someone, and then I promptly buried this as my worst date. I've posted this before because it's so weird. I went for a meal with this girl I met through a dating app, and it was going really well. We started talking about movies, and then we decided to go to the cinema to go watch Inception. She said there was a cinema nearby, but I didn't know the area at all. So I used the GPS on my phone and she held it and directed me. Once we got there, we started walking inside and I realized I didn't have my phone in my pocket. I said I must have left it in the car and started to walk back to get it. She was trying to get me to leave it and saying that we would miss the film, but the phone was only about a week old, so I was really paranoid about it. We checked the car for about 10 minutes, but we couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and her bag, but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to ring my number because I couldn't find it. It started to ring, and it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. She took it out and said she must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around, she was walking the other way. I ran to catch up and ask what was going on, but she was very dismissive and was barely talking. That's when I realized it wasn't an accident and just left her to walk home alone. I have a strong suspicion she's A, done this before, and B, would have excused herself during the movie and bolted then. Highest probability of a clean escape. Thieves, male and female, use dating apps for just this reason. If it would have worked, she would have left during the movie to use the washroom and never returned. Smart OP dodged a bullet. I went on a date with a guy in my apartment block only to see his disappointed face when my girlfriend called me on the way home. I realized he'd assumed I was gay and that I'd assumed he was just a friendly guy who wanted to hang out. This is my favorite in this thread. Everyone is so innocent in making it weird. I always kind of wonder if this is happening to me when I'm hanging out with a new guy friend. In fact, I had a roommate after college who I thought for a while may have been gay. He just came off that way at first, with lots of girlfriends, very peppy, friendly, think golden retriever turned human. Eventually, he told me about his girlfriend with whom he had a long-distance relationship. This story isn't as strange as some, but it's my strongest. A guy I'd met a few times contacted me and asked me on a date. I had never been asked on a date before and accepted despite thinking him a little strange and having heard some odd things about his family. He picked me up and everything seemed good. We decided to grab a pizza and eat it in the park. When we went to purchase the pizza, it turned out he worked there and had all his coworkers come out to gawk at me. This guy wasn't very popular with the ladies and seemed to be proving he had a date. I'm bad in social situations and got super uncomfortable, but didn't know how to bail, and we went to the park. It was very awkward, and I wanted to go home by the end of it. We mostly just sat in awkward silence and tried not to hear each other's chewing. I thought I was going home, but he decided he wanted to stop at his house. I agree because I honestly did not know how to disagree. First dating experience. His home turned out to be with his parents. We were both 18 to 20. This wouldn't have been so bad had they not all 10 of his siblings, I don't remember exactly how many siblings he had, and his parents were home and wanted to meet me. They weren't just a big, nice family, they were very religious and looked like they belonged to a cult. They all had long hair and homemade clothing. They were homeschooled. The mom said hello, then the dad came in and nobody was allowed to say a word while he questioned me on what I and his son had done on our date and when the family would be seeing me again. It was terrifying. My date showed me his pet turtles, which were really cute, and finally drove me home. He tried to kiss me after, making it clear he thought we were in a relationship after one date. At this point, I almost ran from the car. I messaged him later on explaining that I was only looking for friends at this point in time. Feeling pity on this one. Like, he's so socially inept because of his kooky family sheltering him that he couldn't understand the date was a disaster and he wasn't with you. But he wasn't bad enough to go off the deep end and profess his undying love for you like some of the guys that you read about on here, so there's hope for him. Hope he made it. He was a nice guy. He meant well, but yes, he was very isolated. I grew up in almost the same situation and have a lot of social problems because of it. I do feel for him and I hope he's doing well. Got set up on a date with a pretty awkward guy. He picked me up in his car, which was sort of cool considering we were in high school, but oh my god, he was a nervous driver. So nervous, in fact, that he accidentally ran a red light, lost his crap, and ducked into a residential area to sit at the end of a cul-de-sac, freaking out, thinking the cops were coming. I tried to explain that if a cop had seen him, we'd have already been pulled over, but the dude was too freaked out. I don't even remember anything else about the date, just that. It was uneventful, and I never really talked to him again because we had nothing in common. He probably just wanted to wait until his stars went back down to 0. Meet a guy online. He asks me to dinner at a tapas place. I agree because I'm bored and he seems nice enough. We'd been texting for a couple of weeks and it seemed chill. I get there and he's late to meet me. Looks nothing like his profile, about 100 pounds heavier, has bad skin, and is just dressed really sloppily. But I told myself not to be shallow. We are looking over the menu, which was fantastic by the way, and I suggest a few things I'd like to eat, and he begins saying he doesn't eat sweet potatoes, aioli, capers, salmon, radish, arugula, kale, balsamic vinegar, etc. Basically all ingredients except for bread, meat, and cheese, and he won't eat any food if that's what I order. I tell him to get what he wants then, and I'll get something for myself. We get our food, and he is the messiest eater I've seen in my life, getting crumbs and food bits all over his shirt and the whole table, and it was just painful to watch. He also kept insisting I try his food, but I'm a pescatarian and lactose intolerant, so I declined, at which he began berating me and my food choices and being a picky eater. They clear our table for dessert, and he then gets down on one knee and tries to give me a promise ring because he felt a special bond with me and wanted to pledge his life to me after having met online a few weeks ago. Yeah, no thanks. Politely as I could, I declined, to which he started calling me expletives in the middle of the restaurant and then ugly crying and storming out. So I had to pay for the terrible date he asked me on because I didn't want to accept a pre-engagement ring. WTF? Where do you and other female posters here meet those guys? I thought I was weird, but this is some next level crap. I met a guy from OkCupid. The first time we met up in a public place and just had a casual chat. It wasn't a horrible date, but it wasn't very memorable either. I decided to give him another try because it could have just been nerves. On the second date, he invited me over to his place. I knew he lived with his parents, but I kind of assumed they'd be away. They weren't away. They kept coming into the lounge room and giving us iced tea and chips whilst he played Xbox in his track pants, no shirt, and I sat there awkwardly watching. He didn't really speak much to me. It was 11 p.m. and he was in his 30s. I read all these and it really just makes me think I'm an exemplary man when really I'm just respectful and normal. How do people actually think this is how you date? His parents probably are pressuring him to make some attempt at a normal life, so he dragged her over in a poor attempt to look like he is trying. I mean, that's what I'd assume. Met a girl online and decided that we should meet for a date. I'm female, by the way. This sort of matters. I arrived in a strange town that I didn't know, so I relied on her to show me around. She took me to a youth LGBT group. I thought we were staying. Didn't mind. It's a bit odd, but I was newly out. Turns out it was just a chance for this girl to show off that she did in fact have a date. They didn't believe her apparently, and I existed. It was really awkward. When the youth group leader came in, she stood up, grabbed my hand and said, "Later, bitches," and we walked out. Went to a bar for a drink, and then on for some food. It wasn't going well. She was very odd, but I was new to all of this and in a town I didn't know. Once we'd eaten, she said, "Oh, I just need to see a mate who's staying at XYZ hotel." Fine. Went to see this friend. Oh no, she'd booked a hotel room for us for the night. Yeah, I left pretty quickly after that. I may have been inexperienced, but I wasn't about to be tricked into a night in a rough hotel. No, thank you. During my freshman year in college, I had a crush on a girl from my high school. When I asked her out, she informed me that she only dated women. I'm a male. She insisted that we were still friends, she just didn't roll that way. She offered to be my wingman, and I gladly took her up on the offer. A few weeks later, she sat me up on a semi-blind date with one of her friends. We'll call her Monica. The three of us met at Arby's because we were fancy, and my friend tried playing matchmaker. Pimp Ninja Man loves theater, and so do you, Monica. Monica loves music, and so do you, Pimp Ninja Man. The date was going fine, so my friend decided to leave Monica and me alone. We talked a bit more and decided to go see a movie. I didn't have a car at the time, so I hopped in Monica's passenger seat and we went on our way. That's when crap got weird. About 2 minutes after leaving Arby's, Monica receives a phone call. She says it's her roommate and she needs to answer it. She picks up the phone and I hear a man's voice. I was a bit surprised, but it's not too unusual for a girl to have a guy for a roommate. Monica and her roommate get into some kind of argument, and she pulls over to a gas station. Another call pulls in right beside us. Again, I didn't think anything of it at the time. Monica turns to me and says, "I need to go talk to my roommate. Just wait here for a minute." I assume she just wants to be on the phone in private, but what happens next will shock you. Monica gets out of the car and goes to talk to the driver of the car that pulled in next to us. This is where I start to freak out. What are the odds that her roommate happened to pull up right beside us? I hear a bit of yelling and then I start thinking about an escape plan. At this point, Monica opens my car door and says, "Hey, I'm really sorry to do this, but my roommate is going to have to take you home." Now, this is the part of the movie where someone in the audience screams, "Don't you go with him now. That's how you get killed. People always go with the strange man thinking everything will just be a-okay." I wish I could say I got smart, said no thank you, I'll just walk, and went home, but I didn't. With some combination of confusion and curiosity, I get out of Monica's car and head into the passenger seat of this stranger. We're in my hometown, so I know if he goes any direction he's not supposed to, I can just bail out of the car and run to freedom. The guy was pretty big. I was 6'2" at the time, and he was significantly bigger than me, if that tells you anything. I don't remember his name, but we'll just call him Ross. Anyway, Ross starts driving back to my dorm, and we're sitting in awkward silence for most of the trip. Eventually, he says, "So how do you know Monica?" I knew something was fishy, so I wasn't about to say that we were on a date. I just say, "Oh, we have a mutual friend," and hope Ross doesn't get suspicious. He just nodded his head and kept driving. Apparently, Ross was resolving some anger in his head, because out of nowhere, he starts talking as if we were in the middle of a much more personal conversation. "Yeah, a lot of people at our church are upset that Monica and I live together. I think they're just assuming we're having sex all the time or something. It shouldn't even matter since we're engaged. But it's still annoying to hear stuff like that, you know?" I just nod my head and realize what just happened. Apparently, my friend set me up on a blind date with an engaged girl, and her fiance came and picked me up to take me home. I was silent the rest of the night. I told Ross the wrong dorm so he wouldn't know where I lived, and I got out of the car and just walked around campus for a bit. It was definitely the strangest date I've ever been on. Maybe they were on a break and Ross hadn't got the message. I was half convinced OP's story was going to turn into something friends-related. I was kind of disappointed when it didn't. Got asked out by a girl I knew and was sort of interested in, but didn't really know all that well. We went to an open-air jazz concert. Not really my thing, but sure. Once there, she immediately was all over me, hugging, sitting on my lap, etc. Things were going great, or so I thought. It was at that point when things started getting weird. Several band members were giving us strange looks from stage while playing their jazz music. One piano player was mouthing things in our direction, but I couldn't make out what he wanted. People were rude to me for no reason whatsoever while getting drinks. Long story short, my date knew just about all the people there and wanted to get back publicly at her very large boyfriend for cheating on her. Don't hate on me, I'm just an innocent guy. Awkward ending. I met both later that evening at the train station and she pretended not to see me. I started talking to a girl I came across on a dating site. We made plans to meet about 1 week after we began talking. I ended up canceling the plans a few hours before we were supposed to meet, as I had something come up. Told her I was unavailable the following day as well, as I do not live in the same city. A few hours later, she responded, asked me if I wanted to take a road trip to another city a few hours west of where I'm located. She just wanted a co-pilot to keep her company. I agreed, partially because I felt bad for changing plans at the last minute the previous day. I was skeptical. I'd never just taken a random road trip with some girl I hadn't met before. She picked me up in the morning. Not too awkward at first, easy conversation for the most part. Within 10 minutes of being on the road, she needs to pee, but can't wait for the next gas station. She abruptly pulls over on the side of the highway and does her business. Okay, I'm thinking, whatever, you gotta go, right? The place we were traveling to is about 200 kilometers from where I lived. Let's just say we had to make another 5 stops, 2 more on the highway and 3 gas stations before we arrived at our destination. Yes, I started to count after the 3rd stop. Anyways, I'm definitely thinking this girl has some kind of issue. That's a lot of pee breaks in such a short amount of time. Okay, so I was told she needed to pick a few things up in the city. So it wasn't just things, it was her 74-year-old grandmother, whom I would shortly be meeting for lunch, along with a few other members of her family. I said to her, "You're kidding, right?" Well, she wasn't. At this point, I did not have much of a choice considering she is my ride back home. Long story short, it was awkward as heck. Her aunt, a cousin, and some family friends with her grandma. It was like a family reunion. I felt like I was in some kind of dark comedy show and I had to improvise bullcrap. Anyways, made it back home after 4 more pee breaks and having to pretend/lie to her grandmother about actually knowing anything about this girl. Yeah, I didn't talk to her again. How was that for awkward? This happened twice to me. I'll be talking to a girl and then I'll ask her out, specifically using the wording, "We should go get a drink sometime." And they'll agree, and we'll go to a bar with a great selection of drinks and I'll order one, and at this moment they'll tell me they don't drink alcohol. Like, why wouldn't you have said it before? We'd have gone to a coffee place or an ice cream place or something, because now I feel stupid getting wasted while you're drinking peach juice. Turns out some women are just as socially awkward as guys. Yeah, I figured I should take it as a compliment. They're so into going on a date with me that the actual date doesn't matter, but still, come on. Second date. Went zorbing. For anyone who doesn't know what it is, you get strapped into a giant inflatable ball and rolled down a hill. It was awful. The ball wasn't inflated properly, so every rotation you hit the floor, it hurt. It was wet, so there was water inside the ball, and we had to jump out at the bottom of the hill into a puddle, so wet sock galore. The whole experience was horrible. Gave us something to talk about though. Been together for nearly 4 years. You. That was the worst date ever. Them. You want to go out again? You. Yes. That reminds me of my friend's mom watching Sin City. She does not like violence at all. That is the vilest, disgusting piece of trash of a movie I've ever seen in my life. My friend stops the movie. What are you doing? What's the weirdest Craigslist transaction you've ever taken part in? I was buying some bicycle parts from a kid in Manhattan, and I showed up at the corner where we were meeting. A guy walked up looking for someone, and I assumed it was my guy, and we started walking down the block and chatting. Eventually, he asks what he can do for me, and I'm like, "I'm here for crank arms?" The what? The crank arms. Wait, are you selling bike parts? Fairly certain that corner was double booked to a drug dealer too. The guy was nice though, and we laughed it off and then found the right people that we were there to meet. Bought a turtle once on Craigslist. The girl who was selling it was very sad to be parting with her pet, which she'd had for over 10 years, but her parents were getting a divorce and her living situation was in transition. Kept the turtle for a year, then had to get rid of it myself, so I posted on Craigslist. Guess who was the first person who responded? Humphrey and his original owner have reunited after a long year apart. It seemed a serendipitous ending, and I felt quite good about it at the time. Not necessarily weird, but my most memorable Craigslist experience, I had to sell my parrotlet Guapo, as I did not have the time for him with me in college and working full-time. Parrots require a lot of attention. He was an expensive bird, but I didn't want to make money off of him. I put him on Craigslist and got a few inquiries that I did not feel comfortable about. Then I got an email from the most bird couple I could ever imagine. I didn't realize bird people were a thing until I got a parrot. They had converted their home into a bird sanctuary after their kids moved out, and they had a sad female parrotlet which needed a buddy. They sent me photos of her and their home. They had quite a few other birds, and their home looked like a very well-kept exotic bird zoo. It was amazing. She said they did not have a lot of extra money after taking in all these birds, but wanted to give him a good home. I sold him to them for $150 with his large cage, toys, and playground. They came and got him, and the woman was crying happy tears to finally have a buddy for their parrotlet. They were very kind. Guapo was the first and only pet I have ever had to give up, and I have no regrets about giving him to that couple. It was a win for all involved. Traded a lowrider bicycle for a homemade cheesecake. I just wanted the bike out of my house. Still have the plate she delivered it on. Traded my Xbox One for a PS4 Destiny edition last year. That itself wasn't weird, but then I pulled up to the house, and it was a 6'4", 400-pound muscle-bound guy with tattoo sleeves and a giant beard. Needless to say, I was a little bit apprehensive at that point, but I went into his house anyway to test everything. I asked him why he was selling his console, and he said that his kids wouldn't use it. That turned into a 2-hour-long conversation spanning marriage, kids, jobs, politics, and everything else. This guy turned out to be one of the biggest teddy bears and the nicest person I've ever met in my life. He even texted me to make sure I got home okay. Maybe mine is mostly tame, but it was caused by my absent-minded mother. She was buying a used camera from someone on Craigslist. Nice camera, $50. Of course, she can't be bothered to get it, so off I get sent. I was 32, a male, and doing my mother a favor. Well, she told the person to meet at some restaurant nearby. Turns out it closed down 2 years prior and now was a dilapidated building surrounded by a similarly dilapidated fence. The seller shows up and is clearly scared out of her mind. She was a tiny Asian girl, like barely 20, in an abandoned parking lot with some guy that was not a woman that she was supposed to be selling to. She barely cracks her window and I go full apology, explaining that I have no idea why on earth she had us meet up in literally the most creepy place we could possibly be, and that I honestly just want to pay for the camera, meant no harm, and was going to be berating my mother after I see her for setting us up like this. She relaxed, I paid for the camera, and then informed my mother I wasn't picking up anything for her again unless I set the location just in case she picked a crack house next time. My mother is an airhead. My parents' dachshund died, and they put an ad on Craigslist looking for another. Not interested in papers, etc. A couple of days later, they get a call from a guy who says he might have a dog for them, and they decide to meet in the lot of a PetSmart. He gets out of his truck and hands my dad a beautiful half-year-old long hair. My dad says, "This is a nice dog." The guy says, "Thanks," and then gets back in his truck and drives away. He just handed the dog to my father and then left without any introduction, explanation, information, or conversation. I've told this story before, but I had an entertainment center advertised and a woman asked to come over to have a look at it. We set up a time, and when the time came, she didn't show up. I texted her a couple of hours later. She replied and asked if it was too late to come by. It was 10 p.m., but I said okay. She said she would be there in 10 minutes, but wasn't there 20 minutes later, and I texted her again. 10 more minutes, she said, but she hadn't shown up by 11 p.m., so I texted again and said that we would have to do it another day, and she replied that she was just pulling up. I go to my front door, and sure enough, she's pulling into the driveway, and there are about 4 or 5 other people in the car with her. They all get out and start walking towards the door, and I ask them what they are doing, and the woman said that they all want to see the entertainment center. I tell her that only she can come in, and at that point I wasn't sure I even wanted her to come in. She says she needs at least one other person's opinion. I say no, and she gets indignant, and I ask her to leave, and she says that I'm not being a very good Christian. I say I am fine with that and went into my house and locked all the doors, peeking out the window. One of the dudes who was with her is pissing at the end of my driveway, and then they get in the car and drive away. The whole thing was super bizarre. I was selling a cheap microwave and a bunch of other stuff when I moved in with my now wife. The guy has some offbeat questions about it, but wanted to meet and take a look. When we meet, he's a mid to late 20s guy in a very nice Porsche. Seems like a good dude. He gives it a good look over and starts to giggle. I ask what's up and he replies, "Oh, I can't wait until they see it explode. Red flags." I ask what he means by that and he explains that he's a chemistry teacher at a local yet nationally known technical high school. During his summer session, they'll use it for lots of various things, but at the end of the session, they'll take it out to the middle of the field and blow it up. They'll record it with high-speed cameras and do an analysis of the reaction. Woo! In the end, I got my $20 and some smart high schoolers got to explode crap. Win-win. About 3 years ago, I was selling my PS Vita because I needed the money, and I wasn't using it enough to warrant keeping it. I had an ad up on Craigslist for it for about a week and a half for about $200, including all the games, which were about 4 or 5. After a week and a half, I wasn't getting any bites, so I lowered it to $175. A day or two later, finally someone contacted me about it. I met him at the Panera in my town because it was a pretty busy public space, and if he was a sketchy person or dangerous, he couldn't necessarily rob me or whatever. When I met him there, I saw he was a tall guy in his mid-20s. I was around 15 at the time, and I wasn't too keen on meeting strangers, but I needed to sell the thing. I wasn't about to get ripped off at GameStop. So I gave him the Vita to look at it, and he seemed like he was annoyed. He asked if it came with any games, and I said yeah, I did include that in the ad. He demanded show me the games, in the sternest voice I had heard. I just handed them over to him. He looked them over for a good 30 seconds and said, "This is the worst collection of games I've ever seen in my life. How could you charge extra for the games?" First off, I wasn't charging extra for the games. The man was furious at the games I had with the Vita. I didn't really say anything in response. He told me to take the price down to $150 or he wasn't buying it. I said no, that I was staying at $175 with or without the games. He then got really mad. I was nervous enough as it was, but he was really angry. Like his face was getting red and he was about to cry. He hyperventilated for like 10 seconds and people started to look at us. Without saying anything, he handed me 4 $50 bills, took the Vita and the games and ran away. Like grabbed them and ran as fast as he could away. I just took the money and went home. Glad I didn't get hurt. Was selling an electric lawnmower. This wacky lady came to look at it and asked me a ton of questions. I give her an extension cord so that we can start it up, so she knows it works. That wasn't enough for her, so she asked if she could test it out. She took it on a test drive for 20 minutes where she mowed my entire backyard. She bought it for my asking price, and I got my lawn mowed for free. When I was 16 and Craigslist wasn't huge yet, I was pretty naive. I put up an ad for my guitar amp. This guy emailed me and was excited to get this amp. I gave him my address and told him I'd be home at 5. I was a bit late and got home at 5:15. I went downstairs to get the amp for the guy and I couldn't find it, so I called my parents and asked where they put it. No one knew where it was. We looked for a couple of hours, then I got an email from the guy and it went something like this. "Hi there, I got to your house at 5 and no one seemed to be there. The door was unlocked though, so I went in to make sure that no one was hurt or something. I looked around and found the amp in your basement. I hid $100 underneath your kitchen table. Luckily nothing was missing, but it was just weird that he walked through our whole house looking for this amp." About 10 years ago, I met up with a guy at his apartment in the sketchier part of the city to buy a bike. It's an old school, steel frame road bike, so nothing fancy. I just needed a commuter for college. The apartment had no outside lights, kinda creepy as it was already dark outside. The guy met me outside, seemed very nice, and said that he had the bike in his apartment and needs me to take it down because he had a broken arm. He was in a cast, so I said okay. I went in. It was a large studio apartment with a couple of bikes hooked on the ceiling. The shades and lighting made it seem like the whole place was under a sepia filter. I got the bike and completed the transaction. As I was going to the door, he blurts out, "What size are you?" "What? What size shirt do you wear?" I was very confused, but answered anyways. "Large, sometimes medium." He went to his closet and took out a garment bag, opens it, and takes out a nice navy blazer. "I got this a couple of years ago, but barely wore it, since I changed jobs. I have no use for it. You want it?" I was still very confused, thinking this was some kind of ploy, but I wanted to see where it went, since I was a penny-scraping college student. Sure, if it fits." I tried it on. It fits perfectly. "Well, it's yours." "Thanks." I shook his hand and left with the bike and a nice navy blazer, the nicest piece of clothing I owned at the time. I still have that blazer to this day. I was buying a 24-inch computer monitor for dirt cheap. The seller moved the conversation to Facebook. I guess they wanted to see who I was. We agreed on the price and a location to pick it up. She was quite unresponsive though. It would take sometimes days, even weeks, before I got a response from them. I finally managed to get a hold of her and set a time to pick it up. Only when I got there, the house was pitch black. I checked my messages and she sent me a text that she had left the monitor. At the time, this was a $300 monitor, on the curb. She wanted me to put the money in the mailbox and leave. So there I was, in the rain, dressed all in dark clothing, looking like a street burglar. I walked up to the house, and wouldn't you know it, the monitor is just sitting there unguarded underneath a small awning. I dropped my money in the box and made to pick up the monitor and leave. Just then I hear crying. The sound of a small child crying became more and more audible with every second. I grabbed the monitor, stuck it in my car, and booked it. She later messaged me thanking me for being honest. Turns out she was busy with a newborn daughter the entire time and couldn't really leave the house. I mean, that's great for you, but lady, could you be less ominous? The monitor worked fantastically. A guy was having an estate sale and said that he wanted us to email him for the address, since he didn't want too many random people at his house where his family is. Completely reasonable. 2 weeks later, I get an email from him with a link that says to go to this website to confirm the attendance and a list of items for his sale. I go there, and it's a site with pictures of his daughters and his family. The headline of the website says, "This is the family this divorce is tearing apart." My sister had her bike stolen from the communal hallway in her apartment building. She filed a police report, but was basically told there was no hope that she was going to get it back. So she started looking around for a replacement. She ended up seeing her stolen bike listed on various selling sites, so she arranged to view it. Once she saw it in person, she knew for sure it was hers, so she hopped on it and pedaled off. As a poor college kid, I made arrangements to pick up some free Craigslist kitchen appliances that someone said they'd leave in their alley. When the day came, nothing was there, so I went around to the front to see if someone had already picked it up. The elderly gentleman who answered the door had never heard of Craigslist. We started talking and he asked if I wanted to come in since his dogs kept trying to escape outside. This morphed into a tour of the house since he had just recently renovated it and was very proud of his new patio. I got the sense that his daughters, whose photographs were all over, didn't visit very often. His wife had already passed away. After about half an hour, we settled down in the living room with the incredibly adorable dogs and mellow yellows. He starts offering me $20, $40, $60 since I had admitted to scrounging through alleys for free stuff. I decline. The Afghan I'd been leaning on was made with his dog's hair. I remember that A, nobody actually knows I came here, and B, I had work in an hour, so I left. I had a great little computer I was selling on Craigslist. It was about 3 years old and it was running strong. A mother and her young son were driving 2 hours out to meet me at my house so that they could purchase the computer. I had a whole computer set up ready for them to see the grand display. They walked in the door, we shook hands and made pleasantries, then proceeded to go over to the computer. I showed him the computer, I turned it on and stepped back so that he could do his checks to make sure everything was working. Right as he touched the mouse, the computer blue screened and never turned on again. I proceeded to turn bright red in the face and explain how this has never happened before. Posted an ad looking for a walking partner because it was getting boring doing it myself. Someone responded. We chatted a while, exchanged pictures for recognition purposes, and agreed on a time and place. So I show up. She drives up. I introduce myself, she does too, and we start walking. She was polite but not very talkative, and at one point took a phone call. All in all, it was a pretty good walk. Afterwards, we said our goodbyes and I went home. To find my inbox with several emails over the last hour from my walking partner, the first one apologizing for being a couple of minutes late, and subsequent and increasingly frustrated emails asking where I was. It was about that time I realized that I somehow managed to run into someone who was a dead ringer for the person I was supposed to meet, at the place and time I was supposed to meet her, who also had the same name. I explained the situation and apologized profusely. She didn't seem to believe me and stopped responding. I didn't blame her for it. I'd have found it pretty far-fetched as well. Should have exchanged phone numbers, I guess. I still wonder sometimes if the person I walked with thought I was insane or just really outgoing. Last year, a friend and I were looking for an old CRT TV to use in our dorm room to play some Melee without any input lag. Well, after searching for a long time, we found one that cost about $30 and was only about a 10-minute drive from his house. I picked him up and drove to the seller's house to pick up the TV. While we were checking out the TV and making sure it worked properly, we started talking to the seller. It turns out that he had the TV since college and was finally parting with it because his fiancée wanted it out of the house. We asked him what college he attended, and we weren't too surprised to find out it was the same college that we were about to start at. However, it got weird when we found out that he used to live in our future dorm, and it became ridiculous when we found out that we would be in the same room that he lived in. My friend and I returned the TV to the same room it had been in 10 years ago. Bought an iPad from a woman who was selling it because she was trying to afford her kid's prescription and some groceries. She wanted $75 for a current year iPod Touch, and at the store was $200+. When I was leaving with my cash, I realized I had a $50-ish gift card for a grocery store that had no locations where I was, but had a few where she was. So I took that too and told her it had at least 50 on it. I wasn't sure how much more, but it might do her some good. She started crying. Apparently, that was the pharmacy her kids' meds were in, and the gift card would give her a discount somehow. I'm not sure what the deal was. She was sobbing. It had something to do with my card being older and having a loyalty program they still honored, but they didn't sell anymore. She tried to sell the iPod to me for $25, but at the time, I had a steady job and could afford it. Plus, I was desperate for a working iPod, and hers was nicer than any of the others offered. It still had its original box and receipt. I think it was a Christmas gift. This lady made me come in and have a soda since my ride was going to be late, and she started telling me about how she lost her job and then her kid got pneumonia, and she had been so frightened to use Craigslist and give her address, but she was alone with the kids and couldn't take the sick one out into the cold. She was so glad I was a young woman in scrubs, not some scary person. I got to hold her baby, not the sick child, and we chatted. I kinda wish she had lived closer to us. I would have offered to babysit sometime so that she could get a dang break, but it was a 2.5-hour drive to her, and while I was happy that she could use the old gift card and really happy to have the iPod, I was not driving that far again, considering I worked 40 hours a week and usually slept through my weekends. I was selling my bicycle, which served as my loving daily ride to work and school, for $200. A guy answered my Craigslist ad for it and made it clear that he didn't want to stand around talking about it and haggling for a long time. He showed up in a minivan with an interior that looked like it had been used to haul improperly loaded bowling balls and cinder blocks. Inside were about 20 other bikes. He threw $200 at me, grabbed the bike, threw it in, and drove off. I was trying to sell a pair of old ski boots. I find out that the guy I'm meeting is deaf-mute. I don't know sign language, and I didn't have my phone on me to type him messages. That went about as well as it could be expected. I used to go pick up free crap and sell it. One time, somebody posted leftover garage sale stuff, and there were like 50 pictures of computers and electronics. I was at the address maybe 15 minutes after they posted it. I get out of my car and some Asian guy pulls up. Our eyes meet and we both start throwing everything we can into our cars as quickly as possible. He didn't have a method. He was just grabbing anything. I was grabbing anything that I knew could sell. After I filled my car, I looked at his, which was mostly full of junk. But we looked over in the end, and there was a crappy table that we had uncovered. I started to drive away, and he looked defeated. Not my transaction, but something I witnessed. As a disclaimer, it may not have been exactly Craigslist, but something in that vein. I was at Walgreens once, roughly evening time, and noticed two men meeting out front, a young guy and a middle-aged one. They seemed ill at ease, but I didn't really think anything of it until later. I walked around the store a bit, then ran into them again in the aisle closest to the door. It seems that they moved inside due to the better lighting. What they were doing was circling each other, each holding onto a cell phone with one hand and a wad of money with the other. I'm not sure who was doing the selling, but they obviously met to sell the cell phone, and I believe the older man did not trust the younger to hold up his end of the bargain. After a few minutes of this, an employee broke in to mediate, and then they went their separate ways. I put up an ad on Craigslist for a free dryer, stating that the thing worked, but it needed a new heating element. It was old. I didn't feel like repairing it, and I needed a bigger dryer anyway, so I put it out on the curb with a sign that said free dryer, works, but needs a new heating element. The thing was gone in like 10 minutes. I don't know if someone was driving by or because of the Craigslist ad. I was just glad it was gone. Like 6 months later, we're coming home from vacation and I see this weird thing in my yard. And it's the frickin' free dryer I put out 6 months ago. My sign was still on it, but someone had crossed out my needs heating element line and angrily scrawled needs heat, asshole. Who does that kind of crap? I was selling my old 2002 Hyundai Accent after an aftermarket timing belt snapped and ruined one of the pistons. Wouldn't hold compression afterward. I put an ad on Craigslist for $500. It barely starts up, let alone runs, but someone could part it out for more than that. Wouldn't you know it, I had a response in 11 minutes. 11. He says he'll pay $500 if I take the ad down to hold it for him. I happily oblige. A few days later, we meet up, and out from an old Cadillac comes the two biggest, blackest guys I've ever met in my life. They get right up close to me and say, "You selling the car?" We look it over, show them that there are no oil leaks, show them the brakes, etc. I explain I really don't recommend driving this thing in its current state. He gives me a big smile and says, "To each his own, man." He gives me $500, I sign the title and watch him pitter-putter away on the little 2D that probably won't go faster than 20 miles per hour. Went way better than expected, which is what made it so weird for me. I was selling my laptop, and the guy wanted to meet about 20 minutes away in a Lowe's parking lot. A friend and I go, pull in, and find the parking lot is dead. The Lowe's is long gone, and it's a creepy, dark parking lot. The guy then pulls up. He seems a little off, but I can't quite place it. Then he looks at the laptop, says it's good, then asks if I want to ride with him to his bank to get the money. For whatever reason, I said sure. I got in his car where he had Batman audio tapes playing. We get the money and he drops me back off. Everything went fine, but it was creepy. Nothing that weird, but someone posted that they had free dirt left over from a landscaping renovation. My dad decided that we needed some of that dirt, so we drove over there and shoveled it into the truck. I suppose the listing was certainly honest. It was dirt and it was free. A few months after moving into a new, very small house with my girlfriend, I decided I needed a desk for the room that I use as my studio. I looked around on Craigslist and found a huge hardwood desk for free, but I had no idea how huge until I showed up with my neighbor who had a truck to help me haul it. It is like 250 pounds, and we struggled to get it in the door. It turns out literally to take up over 2/3 of the studio. My girlfriend hates it. She's mad that I even got it. After a while, I decide to make her happy and do away with it. But how will I sucker somebody into taking this enormous desk off of my hands? So I go for a comedy angle. I list it for free on Craigslist as Donald Trump's actual desk. I live in a very liberal town, so I'm not sure this will go over well. I get a ton of emails telling me how hilarious this is, how they don't actually want the desk, but good job. Finally, a woman emailed me and said, "I'm a teacher, and Donald Trump's desk would go great in my classroom." I tell her if she wants it, she should bring a truck and possibly a man if she doesn't think she is strong enough for the two of us to lift it. She came alone, and we managed to get it in just the two of us. I hope the desk was a nice addition to her classroom. I needed a coffee table and found a neat one on Craigslist. The seller said the only time he could meet me was Sunday night after 11 p.m. at his house. I was too freaked out to go there, so I skipped it, and now I just shop at IKEA. Back when Gmail was a big deal, someone paid me $5 for a Gmail account. How ridiculous is that?
Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, or brag about how much you make, please share it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.